Chapter 282. Under the blazing sun, the vines were brightly colored and flourishing. Some were as red as fire. When their leaves moved, the sky was filled with scarlet clouds. Some were snow-white and sparkling. When the wind blew, the leaves were like snowflakes rolling about. Some were dark like black dragons hanging upside down. There were dozens of vines in the sky above each of the larger cities. They ranged from tens of thousands to hundreds of meters above the ground, arousing the desire of many people to explore. What in the world is this? Chu Feng had a bad feeling. The appearance of so many vines from all over the world attracted everyone's attention. It was said that at least 2,000 to 3,000 people had disappeared. They climbed up the vines and disappeared into the mist that was 1 to 2 meters in diameter. Some were mutants, and there were even some ordinary people who were very gamblers. They wanted to change their current state and rushed into the sky impatiently. Yellow Cattle was suspicious. He looked carefully and said, "It looks a bit like a constellation vine. What kind of plant is that? Is it famous?" Chu Feng asked. "Yes, it's very famous. When it truly matures, it will cover the sky and cover the sun, and even cover the starry sky," Yellow Cattle replied. His tender little face was filled with seriousness. Chu Feng was astonished. Was it really that exaggerated? This is the most primitive stage of the constellation vine. It has just taken root and germinated. It is still far from mature. As it grows, its form will constantly change. Yellow Cattle's little face was taut. He was extremely solemn as he told Chu Feng that the most astonishing constellation vine was just like its name. It took root in the starry sky, and its vines were connected to thousands of stars. Connected to thousands of stars? Chu Feng was dumbstruck. Was this still a plant? It was like a fantasy story. There aren't many that can grow to such a stage. Yellow Cattle was very serious because this plant didn't exist in the place he came from. It was only recorded in ancient books. In one day, the constellation vines grew all over the sky. What does this mean? Chu Feng frowned. It could be a seed that floated over from the depths of the starry sky and germinated in this land of recovery. It could also be deliberately done by people from other worlds, Yellow Cattle said. That was why it warned Chu Feng not to rush into the mist. It was too risky, and there might be a path behind him. Every famous mountain has its own path. Is even the sky like this now? Why do I feel that the earth is riddled with holes? Or should I say that the earth is well-connected? Chu Feng had a strange expression on his face. It has always been like this. Otherwise, why do you think the inheritances from outside this region would rush over without any regard for their lives? Isn't it all for the sake of harvesting natural luck? Yellow Cow's small face revealed a complicated expression as he gazed into the heavens. There are domains in many places on Earth. This is enough to prove that this primitive ancient land is extraordinary. There used to be all kinds of Taoist rites, Yellow Cattle reminded. Researching domains was more than 10 times more complicated than grasping all kinds of inheritances. Even in the outer realms, few were willing to touch upon this domain. The few domain experts were mostly from the top orthodoxies. Meanwhile, on Earth, the famed mountains were covered in domains. It was just that they hadn't revealed themselves yet. This was extremely astonishing. I'll remind you again. After the upheavals, cultivating here for a year is equivalent to tens or hundreds of years in other places. The roots of the holy tree have recovered, and certain Taoist lands have opened. Even the top sects in the outer realms can't sit still. But for certain reasons, they have no way to rush over and find it difficult to descend. Yellow Cattle brought up the old matter again. This made Chu Feng cherish this opportunity to rapidly evolve. If he missed it, he would regret it for the rest of his life. It was also because of this that experts from all realms would try their best to open up a path to this place. They would send their disciples here in an attempt to obtain an opportunity to become a sage ancestor. At this time, the Golden Condor King descended from the sky. The Black Yak, the Donkey King, and the Manchurian Tiger all gathered over to hear the last part of the conversation. The unscrupulous Manchurian Tiger said with a pout, "Brother, hurry up and comprehend that domain heavenly book. Seize the initiative and occupy all the famed mountains. When those goddesses, doubt, children, and saintesses arrive, they can only obediently throw flirtatious glances at us. At that time, you'll snatch a group of goddesses as your wives, and I'll also marry a few female white tigers. Then, I'll accept a group of divine sons as my underlings and become a sage ancestor. Yellow Cattle said disdainfully, I'm just afraid you'll be the first to betray them and run over to become their mount or mountain guardian beast. Nonsense. Do I look like such a careless tiger? You do. The black yak nodded solemnly. The next day, Linoy returned. She was dressed rather casually and even somewhat rebelliously. There were several holes on her jeans, revealing her sparkling skin. She was wearing a loose t-shirt. This outfit didn't match her identity and temperament, but she was dressed like this. It was as if she wanted to be down to earth. She was tall and had long legs. She walked shoulder to shoulder with Chu Feng and strolled aimlessly along the road. Despite being dressed like this, her temperament was still on the cold side. She was like a snow lotus blossoming on an iceberg amidst the surging mortal world. There was a cold aura and a wisp of delicate fragrance about her. The true great era is about to arrive. Linoy looked up at the sky and gazed at the brightly colored vines. There was worry on her flawless and exquisite face, but there was also yearning. The corporations understood the changes better than ordinary people. Even someone as young as Linoy knew a lot of secrets from her clan. The world might undergo great changes in the near future. Perhaps the strong would remain strong, or perhaps the weak would rise to power. All sorts of situations might occur, and it would be a great change. So much so that foreign creatures were about to descend. A great era was about to arrive. Linoy glanced at Chu Feng and told him seriously that he should restrain himself during this period. He needed to know how to protect himself in the upcoming great era. Chu Feng nodded and understood her good intentions. He naturally knew that the rafter that stuck out would rot first. Now that the famed mountains were covered in snow and the sky was filled with strange vines, it was clear that great changes were about to take place. It was hard to say who would rise and who would fall. The current peerless experts might become even more powerful, but they might also be overtaken by latecomers. The situation was about to change. Even the corporations were waiting for that day to come. Chu Feng couldn't swallow this anger after being hunted down. He wanted to collect one last debt and then lay dormant in peace. Under Linoy's repeated persuasion, Chu Feng nodded and said, I'll cultivate my character and wait for the great changes to take place. When he was lonely, he would read Nanhua. When he was free, he would recite Huang Ting. Perhaps he really needed to live a peaceful life. The last time they met, Linoy had already become a king-level expert. Now, she had advanced further and was starting to exert her strength. Chu Feng knew about the Elder Dragon King. That old flood serpent made him somewhat apprehensive. He was waiting here because he wanted to understand more about it through Linoy. That was because he knew about celestial biology's plans to go out to sea and thus understood many things. He's 1,500 years old and has 3 sons. Hei Tung is his youngest. Linoy explained everything she knew in detail. Chu Feng felt a certain pressure. From all the signs, that old flood serpent was indeed terrifying. He won't come ashore in the short term. The fortunes in the sea aren't inferior to those on land. There are underwater cave residences and legends of true dragon lairs. Most importantly, he's searching for the draconification fruit. That's of utmost importance to him. Linoy guessed that the Elder Dragon King wouldn't come ashore in the next few months. The competition for the draconification fruit was extremely intense. Any clue would stir up a storm of blood. The major hegemons wouldn't leave just yet. Many things can happen in a few months. Chu Feng smiled. There was nothing to worry about. The world would have changed by then. He only needed to seize the opportunity to evolve. He had 3 seeds in his hands. As long as the mutant soil on the famed mountains recovered, he would be able to plant them again. Afterward, Chu Feng asked about the jade stone containing the demon flood dragon fist. Lin Ruai told him that the Preaching Research Institute hadn't returned it yet. On the same day, Chu Feng left with yellow cattle and the rest to Xijing, where the Preqin Research Institute was located. Xijing was the capital of the 13 dynasties of ancient China. It could be considered an ancient capital with a long history. At the same time, it was adjacent to the mausoleum of Emperor Qin. The Preqin Research Institute was located here. In the beginning, they researched the historical context before the Qin dynasty. Later on, they gradually expanded and became a financial magnate. While researching the history of the Preqin dynasty, they had obtained some ancient artifacts and came into contact with supernatural powers. Hence, this financial group became increasingly inclined to pursue mysterious powers. The ancient city walls of Xijing were still there. They were mottled and weathered, like a painting between heaven and earth. It was a piece of living history. In the sky, vines after vines fell from the sky. The latest news is that someone has returned safely. He said that at the end of these vines is the heavenly palace, the celestial ground. Someone has plucked a mysterious fruit and has evolved to the quasi-king realm. Chu Feng and the others heard this news while they were walking through Xijing. Vines could be seen hanging over every major city in the world. Soon, more news arrived. Ordinary people had evolved into mutants, and mutants had evolved into quasi-kings. Will we become peerless kings if we climb up? The black yak was tempted. Don't take the risk. It feels like we're fishing. Chu Feng warned him not to resist the temptation. They arrived at the Preqin Research Institute. Unfortunately, the building was deserted. Only a few unimportant people stayed behind. It was easy to imagine that Chu Feng had conquered 2 major corporations in a single day. This had shaken the world and alerted the other corporations and made preparations. The Preqin Research Institute chose to shrink back and avoid the sharp edge. All the important figures had left. But before long, a familiar person appeared. It was Qi Honglin, a high-ranking member of the Preqin Research Institute whom they had met in Shantian. He was the one who had given the jade containing the demon flood dragon fist to Chu Feng as an apology. This old man has come to express his sincerity. We really didn't participate in the operation to kill Brother Chu Feng. Following which, he offered up a piece of ancient jade and told him that it was the one celestial biology had lent them. It had already been approved by the Lin family branch and could be handed over to Chu Feng. Everything was out of Chu Feng's expectations. The other party dared to show up in such a humble manner and immediately offered up the piece of jade he wanted so badly. This was the second half of the demon flood dragon fist. It was incomplete the last time he obtained it. Yellow Cattle had excitedly told him that after combining the complete demon flood dragon fist with the demon ox herd, his combat strength would at least double. Last time, he had only integrated the first half of the demon flood dragon fist. He indeed felt his strength increase by a level, but it wasn't enough. Chu Feng placed a finger on Qi Honglin's forehead and hypnotized him. In the end, there was no evidence that the Preqin Research Institute had tried to kill him. He felt as though he had punched thin air. What was worth celebrating was that they had obtained the second half of the demon flood dragon fist. Chu Feng, we're at the Great Woods Temple. Chapter 283. Don't worry, we're fine. We're just here to visit a friend. Chu Ziyuan's voice sounded a little unnatural. Chu Feng was stunned. Why did these two suddenly visit a friend in Dalan Temple? He could also feel the unnatural tone of his father's voice. Was there something going on? Chu Feng tried to ask in a secret language that only his parents could understand. He had been prepared in the past. He knew what to do if something like this happened. Don't think too much. We're fine. It's comfortable to be a guest here, Wang Jing said. She seemed to be making fun of Chu Ziyuan. What was going on? Chu Feng was puzzled. We're old friends with the monkeys of Dalan Temple, Wang Jing said. Soon, Chu Feng knew what was going on. He was a little dazed. There was actually such a secret. Back then, when the world started to change, Chu Feng trekked all the way from Mount Taihang to his home in Shantian. It was the time when Dalan Temple shook the world. The old ape was the first to establish a religion. Chu Feng still remembered that his father was very resentful that day. He didn't like the monkeys of Mount Song. To Chu Feng, it was a little funny. His father was usually elegant and steady, But at that time, he wasn't calm at all. Wang Jing told him that when they were young, they went to Mount Song and fed fruits to the monkeys. In the end, Chu Feng's father's kindness was not reciprocated. One of the monkeys scratched his arm, causing it to bleed profusely. From then on, he didn't like monkeys anymore. At that time, Chu Feng took it as a joke. But now he was dumbfounded. That monkey was the grandson of the old ape of Dalan Temple. Some time ago, that monkey went to Shuntian and accidentally saw Chu Ziyuan and his wife in the Bayou Palace. He was puzzled for a moment, and then he was stunned. He actually recognized them. At this time, Chu Feng was also a little dumbfounded. How could this be possible? The monkeys established their religion on Mount Song and established Dalan Temple. They obtained the Golden Arhut level breathing technique and converted to Buddhism. They pay attention to karma. When they saw me and your father, they said that the good karma they sowed in the past is now bearing good karma. Wang Jing said with a smile. Chu Feng was speechless. He was in a complete mess. No wonder Chu Ziyuan's voice sounded so unnatural. Chu Feng wanted to laugh when he realized what was going on. He was completely relieved and told the two that he would rush over as soon as possible. He also wanted to climb Mount Song of the 5 sacred mountains to take a look. This was a famous mountain among famous mountains. Chu Feng was satisfied to be able to obtain the Demon Flood Dragon Fist after the Western Capital incident. On that very day, Chu Feng, Yellow Cattle, and the Black Yak used their blood essence to activate the inheritance. They finally completed the Flood Dragon Fist and branded it in their hearts. For the current Chu Feng, this was of great significance. It could increase his battle prowess. Let's keep a low profile for now. I'm going to MT Song's Dalan Temple. Do you want to come? Chu Feng asked. I'm not going. The Black Yak shook his head with a dark expression. Yellow Cattle was secretly happy because they knew what was going on. Aren't you sworn brothers with the Elder Ape? Chu Feng really touched on the Black Yak's sore spot. Back then, the Black Yak had sneaked up Mount Song to steal the Vajra Bodhi fruit. In the end, he was beaten up by the Elder Ape and held a deep grudge against him. Now that he had nothing better to do, he definitely wouldn't want to go. Yellow Cattle said, let's find a place to train first and then go to Jiangxi. I heard the marine race is going to attack Mount Longhu. Let's see if we can fish in troubled waters. Yellow Cattle whispered to Chu Feng as they parted ways. He wanted to see if MT Song's Dalan Temple had any monkey wine. Monkeys really know how to brew wine. Chu Feng was stunned. He had always thought this was only a legend. Yellow Cattle told Chu Feng that the value of the monkey wine and honey after the upheaval was hard to estimate. Some of them could be treasures. Very soon, Chu Feng understood what was going on. If it was wine brewed from mutant fruits or honey brewed from mutant flowers, it would indeed be extraordinary. In the end, Chu Feng parted ways with them. He didn't let the Golden Condor King act as his mount and set off alone. After the upheaval, the distance between Shijing and Mount Song was about 5,000 kilometers. It was an extremely long distance for ordinary people. To Chu Feng, if he could maintain his speed at 5 times the speed of sound, he would arrive in less than an hour. Of course, he could only maintain this speed for the first half an hour. After a certain time, he would have to slow down. Otherwise, his body would be boiling hot, and he would easily burn himself. That evening, Chu Feng arrived at the foot of Mount Song. The majestic Mount Song was one of the 5 sacred mountains. After the upheaval, it had become exceptionally grand. It was as if it was connected to the heavens. On the mountain, there were green pines and emerald cypresses enshrouded in dense purple mist. Especially under the glow of the sunset, the mountain was dyed a dark red with a faint golden glow. It was an extremely divine sight. Chu Feng didn't use his top speed to ascend a mountain. His figure drifted silently and arrived at the top of Mount Song. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the temple seemed to be inlaid with golden edges. It was auspicious and tranquil. There were ancient Bodhi trees swaying in the wind, emitting Buddhist chants. Dong, dong, the drum of dusk rang out. This place was isolated from the rest of the world and transcended the mortal world. Swoosh! A figure appeared. It was the Elder Ape. This time, he wasn't in his true form and had taken on a human form. He was skinny and not very tall. Although he had obtained a Buddhist inheritance, he hadn't shaved his head. The elder ape had a head full of short hair. His eyes were like golden lamps, flickering with light. This was a peerless expert, and also the first beast to establish his own sect. He had sensed Chu Feng's arrival immediately and appeared in a flash. This was enough to prove how powerful the elder ape was. "Greetings, senior," Chu Feng spoke. The elder ape smiled. He didn't act arrogantly, because he knew that this young man was extraordinary and possessed astonishing strength. He was already standing among the peerless experts. "I've been to Jiangxi to rescue you. I didn't expect you to sweep through a group of beast kings on your own," the elder ape said. Chu Feng knew that many beast kings had appeared in Jiangxi and hadn't left yet, including peerless experts with 6 severed shackles. "Many thanks for senior's good intentions." The two chatted as they walked. Chu Feng saw his parents and was speechless after confirming that they were safe and sound. Chu Feng felt that staying on Mount Song wasn't a bad idea. The environment here was beautiful, filled with spirals of purple mist and dense vitality. It was a very suitable place to live. Last time, Lu Tong had moved the two of them from the Hollow Jade Temple to the roaming Jade Temple out of consideration for their safety. Now that the elder ape had brought the two of them here, it wasn't as if he didn't have such thoughts. "Senior doesn't think highly of me." Chu Feng smiled. Could it be that the elder ape was treating his parents like this because he thought something would happen to him? "No, I think highly of you." The elder ape laughed. "Buddhism talks about karma. It's only right for this old monk to bring the two of you to Mount Song. Just treat it as a way to relax." Just like that, Chu Feng settled down. He wanted to lay low for a period of time because he was satisfied with the environment here. He wanted to cultivate and improve himself here. Early in the morning, the bell rang. Dharma can't be done by law. Well, there's no way. How can Dharma be Dharma? Chu Feng chanted Buddhist hymns and observed scriptures. He was very engrossed and woke up even earlier than the monkeys in the Great Woods Temple. There was a 1,000-year-old temple here and a large amount of Buddhist scriptures. There were even divine ancient trees that had awakened. It made one's mind calm. The heart and the earth give birth to all kinds of things. When the fruit is full of Bodhi, the world opens. For the next few days, Chu Feng didn't leave. He often chanted Buddhist scriptures and observed the weather of Mount Song. He was very relaxed. During these few days, he had mastered the Demon Flood Dragon Fist and combined it with the Demon Ox Fist, greatly increasing his strength. Chu Feng was very relaxed. He stretched his body and often practiced his fist techniques in the morning and evening. His strength became more and more tyrannical. Apart from that, Chu Feng's Xingyi 12 true forms improved further. When he condensed a large bell outside his body, he could imprint the 7th true form on its surface. Dragons, tigers, eagles, and so on revolved around him. The bell rumbled, and its defensive power increased by another level. He was almost invincible. Several days ago, there were only 6 true forms revolving around him and condensing on the golden bell canopy. But now, he had become even more tyrannical and was about to attain an indestructible golden body. Sometimes, Chu Feng would find the old ape to spar with and test his skills. However, there wasn't an intense confrontation and only a few exchanges to deduce a fist technique. He understood that the golden Arhut level breathing technique the old ape had mastered was actually the I Ching scripture. "Senior is truly extraordinary. You single-handedly conquered one of the 5 great peaks." Chu Feng sighed in admiration. "I've only occupied a small part of Mount Song. The true mountain is still hidden in the mist." The old ape sighed and pointed to the void. At this point, Chu Feng completely understood that all the famed mountains were similar. The true location had yet to appear. For several days, Chu Feng lay dormant on Mount Song and disappeared from the eyes of the people. However, the outside world didn't calm down because of his disappearance. A storm was brewing in Jiangxi as the marine race was about to launch a large-scale attack on Mount Longhu. The experts of the marine race had banded together to divide up the mountain. This time, they wanted to capture it in one fell swoop. Even the Peacock King and the Golden Crow had arrived. Additionally, The White Snake of Mount Taihang and the Grand Master of Mount Wudong had also arrived. Even the masters of the Eight Visions Temple, Hollow Jade Temple, and Roaming Jade Temple had rushed over. That was because everyone had a premonition that Mount Longhu might really be opened. Before long, Yellow Cattle contacted Chu Feng. The Golden Rock of Mount Hua and the Mastiff King of Kunlun had also arrived. Additionally, many more kings had arrived. Jiangxi was now in complete chaos. The group of kings wanted to follow the marine race and attack Mount Longhu. "Senior, are you not going?" Chu Feng asked the old ape. "The ancestral court of Taoism isn't that easy to conquer. I won't join the fun." The old ape was quite determined. "Chu Feng, come quickly. A rare treasure is about to appear." No wonder so many experts with 6 severed shackles have come running over. It's worth fighting for. The black yak urged him to move. Chu Feng reminded with a solemn expression, "Peerless experts have arrived in person. You guys shouldn't join in the fun. With so many people fighting, don't be careless and throw your lives away." He indeed couldn't sit still. He was afraid that something might happen to them. Chu Feng didn't want to participate at first because he had been there before. He felt that he couldn't fight his way up and wanted to wait until his strength had improved. "Chu Feng, can you go and provide support to the palace master? They're in big trouble." Lu Tong suddenly contacted Chu Feng, requesting his assistance. "What's the situation? Isn't it the marine race attacking the mountain?" Chu Feng frowned. "A rare treasure has appeared and is now in the palace master's hands." Lu Tong informed him secretly. Chu Feng sighed. He could only continue on his way. "I'll return the favor this time." Chapter 284. Early in the morning, the peak of Mount Song was covered in the morning glow. Not to mention the ancient temples, even the green pines and cypresses were flowing with golden light, as if they were illuminated by Buddha's aura. The bells rang out leisurely. The pale golden temples were filled with a Zen aura, as if they had transcended the mortal world. Chu Feng knew that the situation was urgent. In order to save people, he prepared to set off immediately. After bidding farewell to the elder ape and his parents, he jumped down from the peak. Bang! He landed on the mountainous terrain like a meteor. The ground immediately collapsed and shook violently. Ice and snow flew in all directions as if an avalanche was about to occur. The heavy snow had long since stopped. However, only the ancient temples and the mountain paths had been cleared by the apes of the Great Woods Temple. Everywhere else was still covered in white. Chu Feng was like a human-shaped supersonic aircraft. He sprinted madly. Rocks and trees exploded upon contact with him. Nothing could stop him. Ever since the appearance of the folded space after the mutation, the distance between Mount Song and Mount Longhu was about 8,000 kilometers. Now, Chu Feng did not hold back. He sped along the way as if saving people was like putting out a fire. Of course, he could not tire himself out. Every time his body heated up, he would slow down. Otherwise, he would not be able to fight even if he arrived at Mount Longhu. The sun had just risen, and all living things were full of vitality. On this warm morning, everyone's tranquility was broken. News after news came from the south, like one active volcano after another erupting. The golden rock of Mount Hua was suspected to have fallen. The mastiff of Mount Kunlun was killed. Everything was too sudden. When the news came, it was like a tsunami or a meteor crashing into the earth. A great battle had taken place at Mount Longhu. The experts of the continent were slaughtered. Grievous news came one after another. Several days ago, the marine race had joined forces to attack Mount Longhu. They wanted to take down this capital of Taoism. The experts of the continent had also rushed over. Who would have thought that an earth-shattering battle would take place there? It would change the power structure of the entire continent. This morning, the bloody battle had reached its climax. The kings roared, and the heroes fought fiercely. Mount Longhu was dyed red with blood. The peerless experts of the continent had suffered serious injuries. 90% of them had been massacred. They had truly gone mad from the battle. The white snake of Mount Taihang was so powerful that it coiled up like a mountain. But in the end, it was defeated. Half of its body was severed by a single sword strike. The chest of the hollow jade temple master has been pierced through. His blood has splattered all over the ancestral court of Taoism. As soon as the news came out, everyone was shocked. Like a dam bursting, it swept through the world. Everyone was stunned. In a single night, the famous experts of the continent were either defeated or killed. Some died, some were injured, and some were killed. Blood was shed on Mount Longhu. Soon after, news spread that the Eight Visions Temple Master's arm had been chopped off, and he was now trapped at the peak of Mount Longhu. It was said that the old Grandmaster of Mount Wudong fought a blood-soaked battle, but he was drowned in the shadows of swords and sabers, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. This was a brilliant morning, but it left one feeling fear. Everything happened too suddenly. In just a single night, news of the continent's creatures' defeat shook the world. Sea race. All of this was done by the marine race. They were fighting against the experts of the continent at Mount Longhu. Even the warm sun could not dispel the chill from people's bodies. Everyone felt their scalps go numb, and fear arose in their hearts. This was a situation they had never imagined. What was the marine race trying to do? Had they gone mad? Massacring the continent's experts like this? Could it be that they were going to embark on a large scale? The world was about to change. I don't believe this is true. The famous experts of the continent have been defeated one after another. This is unimaginable. The world is turning upside down. Are the marine race going to rule the continent in the future? It was as if a flood had overflowed the sky. No one could calm down. Everyone was in a state of panic. At this moment, many people were feeling extremely uneasy and terrified. At this moment, Chu Feng was not paying attention to these things because he was focused on his journey. He was completely unaware of the explosive news this morning. Bathing in the morning glow, he continuously circulated his breathing technique. His two long legs were extremely powerful. Every time he stepped on the ground, he would traverse a distance of 2 to 3 kilometers. This kind of speed was difficult for ordinary people to comprehend. A person of flesh and blood could actually reach such a step. This was no different from the land immortals of ancient legends. They could travel unhindered across the primordial land, roam the northern seas in the morning, and travel the world in the evening. They could travel tens of thousands of kilometers in a single day. Chu Feng's feet were glowing. Every time he landed, he would erupt with astonishing energy. He was utilizing his divine feet and would immediately cross over a wide river. Even if he encountered a mountain peak blocking his way, he could still rush up and leap to the peak. Along the way, there would be occasional explosions of rocks. Even though he couldn't fly, he was still faster than a bird. Finally, he was tired and began to slow down. This kind of exhaustion stemmed from the high temperature of his body. At this moment, he was like a furnace that was constantly emitting white steam, and energy rays were rushing out of his pores. Chu Feng took a stroll and took deep breaths to recover his energy. The drifting energy between the heaven and earth was drawn over by him and blended with his body. This allowed him to gradually relax, and his body temperature also returned to normal. His communicator rang. It was Lu Tong looking for him. "I'm in a hurry. I've traveled more than half the distance. Don't worry, I'll reach there as soon as possible," Chu Feng said, thinking that Lu Tong was urging him. He had been running at full speed and had already left 5,000 kilometers of mountains and rivers behind. There was still about 3,000 kilometers left. After resting for a while, he would be able to run to the end in one go. "I'm somewhat regretful. I'm not urging you to hurry to Mount Longhu. That place has already become a meat grinder. Don't go." Lu Tong sighed. "What happened?" Chu Feng was astonished. "Didn't you notice the latest news? Then don't read it. Remember, Chu Feng, staying alive is the most important. Hurry back." Lu Tong's voice was gloomy. Chu Feng was astonished and quickly checked the news page on his communicator. He was momentarily stunned. A famous continental expert had suffered a setback. Their blood had dyed Mount Longhu. The Mastiff King of Mount Kunlun had died in battle. The bloody feathers of the white cranes from the Mount Shu Sword Palace filled the sky. Chu Feng's heart sank after reading a few pieces of news. This was too unexpected and caused him to tremble in fear. What kind of tragic situation was this? He knew very well that these people were all experts and exceedingly powerful. However, there were still casualties and injuries. This battle was extremely frightening. Chu Feng couldn't confirm whether the news was true or not. If it was, then the current power structure would be completely shattered. Suddenly, he saw a piece of news accompanied by a picture. The old Grandmaster of Mount Wudong was surrounded and attacked by the marine race. His body was covered in blood, and his robes were in tatters. His white hair was drenched in blood. This was a video of the battle at Mount Longhu, and it had been posted. This caused a baleful aura to appear on Chu Feng's face. Flames surged around his body as he clenched his fists. His heart was somewhat stifled. He had to rush over and participate in this battle. On several occasions when Chu Feng was in dire straits, this old man would always stand by his side. This made Chu Feng feel grateful. Now that he saw this old man's hair and beard drenched in blood, his heart tightened. Even though he knew the place was incomparably dangerous, he still had to rush over. Even if the news is true, the marine race must have paid a painful price. It's impossible to deal with those experts with 6 severed shackles without shedding blood. Chu Feng began to contact the yellow cattle, the black yak, and the others but couldn't get through. He had lost contact with the 2 oxen. His expression was solemn as he tried to contact the Manchurian tiger and the Donkey King. Similarly, there was no response. Chu Feng took a deep breath and began to run madly once more. This time, he was even faster and didn't stop along the way. He traversed the mountains and ridges as though he was flying. Finally, Chu Feng approached Mount Longhu. His body was scarlet red, and strands of blood energy were rising from his pores. He was simply too fast. The 3,000 kilometers wasn't a smooth journey. There were all kinds of obstacles, but he had killed his way there in half an hour. Mount Longhu had recently become a gathering place for many mutants and beast races. It had been like this for several days. These people weren't strong enough to ascend the mountain and had only rushed over after hearing the news. Especially this morning, news of a decisive battle between land and sea had caused a huge commotion. Many people were terrified, but there were also some who were extremely daring and came to watch. Chu Feng was calm and didn't rush over immediately. That was because what was going to happen had already happened, and there was no point in being anxious. He was adjusting himself and climbing the mountain in peak condition. He was going to participate in this battle, but he wasn't going to throw his life away because of anger and impulsiveness. He would retreat if things didn't work out. He wouldn't throw his life away in vain. As long as he survived, he would settle the score with the marine race sooner or later. Naturally, he would do his best to charge in and try to rescue some people. Chu Feng was resting and recovering his energy while checking the news. He wanted to understand the situation as much as possible. All the battles were happening on Mount Longhu. Why hadn't anyone escaped? At first, Chu Feng was astonished, but he understood the situation after careful investigation. There was a mysterious space on the mountain where the marine race and continental kings had fought their way in to fight for fortunes. It was difficult to escape, even if they were defeated. Those people were trapped inside. The Black Yak. Suddenly, the latest news appeared on his communicator. A few pictures were reflected in Chu Feng's eyes, causing a divine glow to erupt from within. A heroic marine race expert with a head of light golden hair was standing on Mount Longhu with a bloody ox horn in his hand. He then threw it to the ground and stepped on it. Chu Feng's pupils constricted. That was very similar to the Black Yak's horn. There were white crane feathers and a human expert's arm beneath the golden-haired marine race expert's feet. The scene was somewhat terrifying. Sea God Tiger. This golden-haired man came from the ocean and belonged to the Sea God Tiger race. His strength was terrifying. He had once stood on Mount Longhu and coldly asked who would dare fight him. The Black Yak. Chu Feng was worried. The Black Yak had been injured by this golden-haired man? The only thing that kept him calm was that the Black Yak's corpse wasn't in the pictures. Very soon, Chu Feng's body trembled. He saw a corner of a bloody shirt beneath the golden-haired man's feet. It looked very similar to the clothes Yellow Cattle had worn before. This caused Chu Feng's heart to churn, and he was filled with anxiety. His heart was restless as the energy within his body surged. His blood energy undulated like the ocean and emitted a terrifying aura. Chapter 285. Chu Feng recovered his essence energy as he walked. His steps were powerful, and the drifting energy in the vicinity was drawn over by his breathing technique. Treasured splendor rapidly appeared on his body. He arrived at the back of the crowd without making a sound. There were too many creatures in this area, both beast races and mutants. So much so that some vicious birds and ferocious beasts had yet to transform. They were densely packed with shiny scales and bright feathers. The battle on Mount Longhu had attracted many creatures. This is too worrying. Don't tell me the old Grandmaster of Mount Wudong really died in battle. What a pity. A young human girl's eyes were red. She found it hard to accept. The old Grandmaster's fist technique is unfathomable. Perhaps he'll survive. A middle-aged man spoke, but even he himself didn't quite believe it. The old Grandmaster had fallen into the strange space of Mount Longhu after being surrounded by the marine race. His body was covered in bloodstains. Not only were the humans discussing this matter, but many beast races were also whispering among themselves. They were incomparably worried. That was the golden-winged Rock King, the headmaster of Mount Hua and one of the top 10 experts of the East. Could it be that he was really killed? A strange bird with a body as red as agate muttered in low spirits. They weren't willing to believe it. If even one of the top experts of the bird race had fallen, it would be a great blow to them. Chu Feng remained silent. His breathing technique became increasingly calm as his body recovered rapidly. He was already not far from his peak and was preparing to charge Mount Longhu. However, he became vigilant after hearing the discussions of these people. He felt that this place was a dragon's pool and tiger's den. The continental experts were definitely not weak, but there was still a lot of blood. He had personally witnessed the golden-winged rock's graceful bearing. He had long since evolved the bloodline of an ancient divine bird. During the Battle of Kunlun, he had torn apart one of the most powerful experts of the West, the Black Dragon. But even such a divine rock had died here? How boring. The continental experts do have some skill, but their numbers are too few. I still want to hone my blade intent, but there aren't enough to kill. A lazy voice came from the top of the mountain. It was a white-haired man with a dazzling blade in his hand that was still dripping with blood. He looked down the mountain in an ostentatious and casual manner. Chu Feng found out from the mouths of the people at the foot of the mountain that he was the White Shark King, a very powerful character. Even the Hollow Jade Temple Master had suffered a blow from his blade. In addition, this person had participated in the siege of Mount Wudong's old Grandmaster. He had slashed the old man's back, causing serious injuries and blood to splatter everywhere. All right, White Shark King, you should go kill the enemies. I'll oversee this place. A black-haired man appeared halfway up the mountain and replaced him. The White Shark King had a faint smile on his face as he disappeared with his blood-dripping saber. Killer Whale King. Someone at the foot of the mountain spoke in a low voice, triggering a commotion. Many people couldn't help but lower their heads, not daring to look up the mountain. It was because this person was also extremely savage. The Tiger Whale King was tall and sturdy. He had a head of thick black hair and a wild look in his eyes. He threw something out with a bang and hung it on a large tree halfway up the mountain. I've cut off half of Chu Feng's brother's tail. I wonder if he's here yet. I've been waiting for him for a long time. The Killer Whale King spoke with a cold tone. That half of the tail was ashen and dripping blood as it hung on the tree. The foot of the mountain was deathly silent. Chu Feng's brother's tail had been cut off. This sworn brother of Chu Feng's is a donkey. He runs quite fast, but I'll spare his life for now, the Tiger Whale King said indifferently. A donkey was Chu Feng's sworn brother? The people naturally didn't believe it. Was the Tiger Whale King purposely mocking Chu Feng and targeting him with dense hostility? He killed my sworn brother, Heitong. The Does he think this matter is over? I'll kill all his brothers one by one. The tiger whale king looked down at the foot of the mountain. The people immediately understood that the clam fairy and the tiger whale king had rushed over immediately after news of Hei Teng's death at Mount Sanqing. It was obvious that their relationship wasn't ordinary. The donkey king was gravely injured by the tiger whale king. Chu Feng's heart was surging with killing intent. He had avoided the others and was traversing through the forest in hopes of killing the tiger whale king. However, there were no fluctuations on his body. His footsteps were calm as he climbed the mountain. He didn't want to be discovered as soon as he appeared. During the past few days, the marine race and continental experts had climbed Mount Longhu together. They had indeed opened up a path of blood along the way. This wasn't the path Chu Feng had taken last time. The end of this bloody path was far beyond the halfway point of the mountain. Not all the marine race experts on the mountain were experts with 6 severed shackles. Some of them were very ordinary and were responsible for standing sentry and patrolling the area. A great battle had taken place here. It was riddled with potholes and melted rocks. There was also a lot of blood, broken bones, scales, and feathers. These were all left behind by king-level entities. Chu Feng had already recovered to his peak state. He walked along the bloody path and didn't encounter any dangers from the domains. He was soon approaching his destination. He wasn't far. He was less than 300 meters away from the tall and sturdy tiger whale king. There was a shabby Taoist temple in that area. It wasn't much bigger than an ordinary pavilion, and its walls were cracked. It seemed as though it would collapse at any moment. The only abnormality was that it was emitting a weak light. Its old and dilapidated appearance was the most obvious manifestation of this. According to the people at the foot of the mountain, there was a mysterious space behind the Taoist temple where a group of experts with 6 severed shackles had killed their way in. The dilapidated Taoist temple was the entrance. No one had noticed it before because it was almost covered in weeds and thorns. Only when someone accidentally barged in did they discover that there was another world. Apart from the tiger whale king, there was also a beautiful lady here. She was the clam fairy. Her hair was like a waterfall. Her face was exquisite, and her eyes were twinkling. She could be considered beautiful. There was a pair of jade-white clamshells on her back. They were sparkling with a translucent luster and gave her an unconventional temperament and charm. She was a beauty, but her hands were stained with blood these days. There was a jade table here with a plate of fruits and desserts on it. The clam fairy was quite calm and was enjoying the desserts much more steadily than the tiger whale king. She said indifferently, "Tiger whale king, why are you in such a hurry? You can take your time. Kill the 2 oxen inside first, then kill the tiger. Do it one by one, and let that surnamed chew slowly savor the taste." She was wearing a long white dress and was very beautiful to begin with. It could be said that she was elegant, refined, and even had an otherworldly temperament. However, at this moment, she was intimidating. Many people at the foot of the mountain had heard this and felt that the clam fairy was even more intimidating. Her heart was far from her appearance. That makes sense. I will chase after them immediately. None of them can escape. The tiger whale king also revealed a smile, but it was somewhat cold and cruel. His teeth were as white as snow. "Oh, we can also make a gourmet rankings later and invite that surnamed Chu to comment on which is better, braised beef or roasted tiger meat." The clam fairy was still smiling as she said this, but her eyes were somewhat cold. Her admiration for Hei Teng was no secret. She wanted to kill Chu Feng even more than the tiger whale king. Haha, this isn't a bad idea. Wait for my news. I believe you'll be able to taste those delicacies soon. The tiger whale king turned around and walked into the small Taoist temple. Chu Feng was less than 100 meters away. He was ready to make his move and launch a fatal attack. This was a good opportunity to kill the clam fairy first and then the tiger whale king. However, the clam fairy suddenly stood up and faced the foot of the mountain. "Chu Feng, have you arrived? If not, your brother is going to die," she said with a smile. "There really aren't many experts on the continent. Their numbers are too few and simply not enough to encircle and annihilate them. Speaking of which, Chu Feng, Your brother is quite pitiful." Speaking up to hear, she leisurely walked over and stood on a higher slope. She picked up a corner of a bloody shirt from the ground and said, "I personally tore this off from that little guy. It's a pity that I only injured him and didn't kill him on the spot." Chu Feng's eyes were spitting fire as he stared at that place. He was sure without a doubt that it was Yellow Cattle's clothes. There were many bloody items in that area. There was a broken horn from the Black Yak, a feather from the Golden Condor King, and even the tattered robes of the Wudong Grandmaster. "These are all my spoils of war. A small portion was killed by me personally, and the rest were brought back by others." The Clam Fairy was smiling brilliantly. She was kicking about with her feet and fiddling with the bloody items. Her face was glowing with health. Chu Feng moved. He leapt forward to kill this woman. As he saw it, this so-called Clam Fairy had no immortal chi at all. She was fairly malicious and wanted to provoke him into rushing to Mount Longhu. This woman would go crazy in order to avenge Heitong. If he didn't kill her now, she would definitely do something even more terrifying later on. "Die!" Chu Feng shouted. The Clam Fairy's pupils constricted. She hadn't expected Chu Feng to really come. Moreover, he was less than 100 meters away. This distance was too close for an entity of this level. "Chu Feng! Oh God, Demon King Chu is here!" Cries of alarm rang out from the foot of the mountain. Both the mutants and the beasts were looking forward to seeing him display his might. They wanted to see him charge into that mysterious space and slaughter the marine race. "I've been waiting for you." The Clam Fairy wasn't flustered. She raised her hand, and a jade box appeared in her palm. With a bang, the box's lid sprang open and a beam of sword light flew out. Chi! The dazzling rainbow was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. It was as if a sword immortal was crossing the sky and slaughtering the world. "Not good." Someone cried out in alarm. Many people were hoping that Chu Feng would be able to suppress the marine race troops, but now they were all afraid after seeing this scene. There was a lethal weapon within the jade box, which had previously injured the Mastiff King of Mount Kunlun. Someone had personally witnessed the Mastiff King's chest being cut open with a flash of sword radiance. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He saw clearly that the sword radiance wasn't a flying sword, but rather a silver piece of paper with demonic runes carved upon it. He immediately understood that this was similar to the golden Arhut talisman he had seized from the Archaic Alliance. It was a crude product left behind by an ancient powerhouse. But to people at their level, it possessed great destructive power and could even injure or kill an entity with 6 severed shackles. Fortunately, he wasn't careless. He hadn't underestimated anyone since he had climbed the mountain. A multicolored light flickered in his hand as he disappeared from the spot. Chu Feng withdrew himself into the spatial bottle and allowed the sword radiance to hack at him. He was unscathed despite the clanging sounds. He was only shaken violently. He had long since experimented with this bottle and found that it was excessively sturdy. He couldn't break it no matter how hard he tried. He had come to Mount Longhu this time because he was worried about falling into a domain and encountering a murderous power he couldn't defend against. That was why he wanted to use the pristine jade bottle to transcend his tribulation. He hadn't expected that this Clam Fairy would actually possess a product similar to the golden Arhut talisman from ancient times. Pop! After hacking it 6 or 7 times, the silver paper was broken into pieces. It was no longer a sword radiance and had turned into flying ash. How was this possible? The Clam Fairy was astonished. This was the Flood Dragon Talisman, a product left behind by an ancient divine flood dragon. Even if one didn't put much thought into it, it was still not something an ordinary person could resist. She was in charge of guarding the outside. Although she looked delicate, she had actually brought along such a powerful weapon to trap and kill the experts who had come to help. She hadn't expected that Chu Feng would be able to escape this calamity. With a swoosh, Chu Feng appeared once again. He rushed out of the pristine jade bottle and put it away. Then he raised his fist to attack. The Clam Fairy's expression changed. She was an expert with 6 severed shackles. Although she looked young, she had lived for hundreds of years and possessed extraordinary cultivation. With a bang, She closed her shell to protect herself. Furthermore, the shell began to glow. Strands of energy transformed into beams of light and shot towards Chu Feng. Kill! Chu Feng was fearless. He had just finished cultivating the Demon Flood Dragon Fist. After combining it with the Demon Ox Fist, his strength had increased by a large margin. He was even more powerful than before. Boom! A single punch pierced through the snow-white shell and caused the clam fairy to let out a miserable cry. Even though she had long since severed 6 shackles, she was still no match for Chu Feng. The latter could be considered peerless, but she wasn't. The clam fairy's hands glowed and crossed in front of her, hoping to block the attack. Unfortunately, Chu Feng's punch could be considered peerless and powerful. At the same time as it pierced through the shell, it also broke her arms and pierced through her body. Blood sprayed out in all directions. Just one punch, someone at the foot of the mountain cried out in alarm. Everyone was ineffably shaken. The stately clam fairy, a marine race expert with 6 severed shackles, had been pierced through by a single punch from Chu Feng. This was too shocking. The clam fairy cried out in misery. Thump! With a shake of Chu Feng's arm, the clam fairy was torn into pieces and sent flying. Afterwards, Chu Feng took large strides and entered the small Taoist temple. He was going to chase after the Tiger Whale King. Everyone was trembling. They felt a tsunami-like momentum from Chu Feng's body. They all had a premonition that Chu Feng was about to start a massacre. Chapter 286. Chu Feng had entered and barged into the small Taoist temple. At the foot of the mountain, there were many human figures. Many people were shouting loudly as their blood boiled and their hearts surged. With just a single punch, Chu Feng had killed the clam fairy and killed an expert with 6 severed shackles. Both the beast race and humans were stimulated. Many people were crying out in excitement after seeing the insufferably arrogant marine race expert killed by Demon King Chu in such a violent manner. They felt extremely satisfied and exhaled a mouthful of resentment in their hearts. Previously, these marine race experts were too arrogant and domineering. They had heavily injured some of the peerless experts on the continent with their killer weapons and were even making sarcastic remarks. This made many people feel sullen. Now that the news of Chu Feng killing the enemy with a single punch had come out, many people felt much better. The area below Mount Longhu was filled with excited cries and wails. The news spread to the outside world immediately. Demon King Chu had appeared and killed the marine race experts. Someone had recorded the scene and caused great waves in the outside world. It seems Chu Feng is furious. He has disregarded everything and killed his way in to save the clam fairy. The mysterious space on Mount Longhu is destined to be filled with a peerless slaughter. Perhaps the marine race will suffer great losses. Everyone could see that Chu Feng was so anxious that he wanted nothing more than to grow wings and charge in. That was because he didn't even pay attention to the clam fairy's body. According to this demon king's habits, how could he let go of such a top-grade delicacy? It should be a top-grade ingredient in his recipe. Of course, those who spoke according to this kind of judgment made everyone speechless. But after some thought, it was indeed the case. The Taoist temple was small and full of cracks. It was old and dilapidated. After entering, Chu Feng discovered a different universe. The Taoist temple was emitting a faint light. The so-called palace hall extended forward without end. He ran in large strides and found that this passage was quite odd. It was several kilometers long, as if it was constructed of energy. There were no rocks or buildings, only a faint yellow, crystalline energy tunnel. Chu Feng ran for several kilometers in one go before coming to a halt. An energy door appeared in front of him. It could be called an energy barrier and was almost transparent. One could vaguely see some plants and grasslands behind it. It seemed to be connected to another space. Chu Feng was very cautious. He used his spiritual martial arts and moved the flying sword to explore the way. He encountered some resistance when passing through the light curtain, but there was no danger. He stepped in and felt a certain pressure pressing down on his body. If he wasn't a king-level entity, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. He transmigrated over and was completely stunned. He saw the green grass and the blue sky. This was simply a new world. He was sure that there was no such place in the outside world. Folded space is really mysterious. Chu Feng became even more cautious, quietly sizing him up. His pupils constricted. That was because there were a few pumpkin seedlings in front of him, all of them bearing large pumpkins that had long matured and were emitting a golden luster. Moreover, the pumpkins here were exceptionally large, each as tall as a person, and their entire bodies were emitting golden light. The last time he climbed Mount Longhu, he and Schiller were fried to death by 5 different vegetables. One of them was this pumpkin. However, the pumpkins at that time weren't this big. They were about a foot in diameter. Chu Feng suspected that even he wouldn't be able to withstand the explosion of this man-sized pumpkin. This place was very dangerous. A battle had taken place here, and many people had gone through a painful ordeal. Although the traces had been covered, Chu Feng could still smell a wisp of blood under his careful observation. He could also see some charred areas that had been struck by lightning. With the clam fairy guarding the outside and the divine flood dragon talisman in her hand, who can attack? It'll be easy for us. There were 2 marine race entities in the distance. They weren't peerless experts, but they weren't weak either. They had probably severed their 4th shackle. If an enemy appeared, they only needed to attack the pumpkin seedlings from afar. The man-sized pumpkin would explode, and even peerless experts wouldn't be able to withstand the explosion. Chu Feng lay prone on the ground, his left palm glowing with lightning runes. This was the heavenly master demon subduing technique he had comprehended on Mount Longhu. He moved close to the ground and quickly passed through this area. Any ordinary person would have been baptized by lightning and would be half dead, if not dead. However, he had grasped the demon subduing technique and was compatible with the lightning in this area. His palm glowed and merged with the pumpkin seedlings without triggering any lightning. He charged through with a swoosh and successfully passed through. The 2 marine race experts were alarmed. They were astonished that a new person had appeared out of nowhere. In order to pass through this area, a bronze pillar had to be pulled up from the ground. There was a small domain here that could control the intensity of the lightning in the pumpkin seedling area. But Chu Feng had appeared just like that and killed his way to them. Kill! The 2 marine race experts roared and pounced over together. Bang! Chu Feng didn't stop. He utilized his dexterity and sent them into the pumpkin area. He then charged into the distance without even looking back. Boom! A great explosion rang out amidst surging thunder and interweaving golden lightning. The 2 marine race experts' bodies were directly pierced through and were torn to pieces. They screamed miserably as they were blasted apart by the lightning, leaving behind charred remains. Chu Feng searched with his powerful divine instincts. He wanted to find yellow cattle and the others as soon as possible. The black yak's horn had been cut off, and the donkey king's tail had been cut off by the killer whale king. They were all in a miserable state, and no one knew how they were doing. Very soon, he discovered to his astonishment that this area was very small and only a few dozen kilometers in radius. With a speed of 5 times the speed of sound, he was able to cover the entire area in a short while. There were traces of a great battle and dilapidated mountain peaks, but he didn't find any old friends or enemies. Chu Feng picked up a Taoist robe. The blood hadn't completely congealed and dyed his hands red. Doubtlessly, this belonged to the Wudong Grandmaster. Afterwards, Chu Feng's gaze focused on a strange plant. At first, he thought it was a large tree, even taller than a mountain peak, but later on, he discovered that it was actually a calabash vine. With a swoosh, Chu Feng rushed up and climbed up the thick calabash vine. Sometimes he even stepped on the giant leaves and directly jumped up. The calabash vine was green and exuberant with vitality, but there were no calabashes on it. After rising several thousand meters and passing through the small world's clouds, Chu Feng was astonished to find a large hole in the sky. He hesitated for a moment, but then directly jumped up and entered the space above. A rich aura of life rushed over. It was as if he had entered a mythical world. All the plants here were lustrous. Even the weeds were lush and green. As for the flower buds, they were sparkling and glowing, filling the air with a rich fragrance. Many of the old trees were so thick that 5 or 6 people couldn't even wrap their arms around them. Many fresh and tender vines hung down from the trees, flowing with luster. Everything looked so magnificent. Chu Feng rushed forward. This world above the sky was very big. Is this the immortals' pure land of Mount Longhu? He was astonished. If it weren't for the bloodstains on the ground and the destruction of the mountains ahead, this place would be indescribably peaceful. Very soon, his expression became gloomy. The further he went, the more shocked he became. He saw a piece of flesh with jet black fur. This belonged to the Mastiff King. Someone had used a sword to cut off a large piece of flesh from its body. It had broken out of the encirclement with heavy injuries, and the entire mountainous region had been destroyed. Very soon, Chu Feng found a small tree about half the height of a person. It bore a purple fruit that was emitting a sweet fragrance. There's a mutant fruit here. He was slightly astonished. This fruit could directly evolve an ordinary person into a powerful mutant. Soon after, he saw an ancient scarlet tree several meters tall. It seemed it had borne fruit before, but had been plucked by someone. There were bloodstains here, indicating that a battle had taken place. Chu Feng realized that it was no wonder the marine race wanted to encircle the continental experts. There were many fortunes here, and they were fighting over them. He followed the bloodstains and ran all the way to the location of the battle. He was chasing after those who were engaged in a great battle. He finally saw human figures after running for hundreds of kilometers. There were 3 creatures walking together. All of them were kings, and their bodies were stained with blood. One could see that they were marine race members because they had retained some racial characteristics after evolving into human form. One of them had 2 large pincers on his arms. Another had a shark's head, and when he opened his bloody mouth, his teeth were as sharp as daggers. The last one had lumps all over his body. Although he was human, he had the tentacles of an octopus. They were wriggling and covered in mucus. Moreover, one of the octopus tentacles was holding a bloody head. Chu Feng's heart sank, and his expression turned cold. That was a beast king from Mount Kunlun. He had actually died in their hands. He had good relations with the great demons of Mount Kunlun. Seeing someone he knew die so tragically made his heart feel stifled. That damned leopard. It runs so fast. I almost caught it. The 3 marine race kings were complaining. It's fine. The tiger whale king has taken action. It can't escape and will definitely be torn apart. Where are those 2 oxen? The tiger whale king ordered us to find them. He wants to kill them personally and hang their heads on Mount Longhu to lure that Chu Feng to his death. The 3 marine race experts were covered in blood. However, it wasn't their own blood. They were carrying the beast king's head and were searching for the yellow cattle and the black yak. Chu Feng appeared and emitted a powerful aura. He didn't conceal it all, shocking them greatly. This area could be considered the rear. There were no peerless experts here, and it had already been flattened by the marine race experts. They couldn't help but retreat after discovering that Chu Feng was an expert with 6 severed shackles. You're Chu Feng. The 3 recognized him and wanted to cry out loud. They wanted to attract peerless experts to hunt down Chu Feng. Boom! Chu Feng punched out and activated his flying knife. A single punch had blasted apart the Crab King with 4 severed shackles and beheaded the other 2 with a flying knife. Fresh blood sprayed high into the air. Chu Feng chased after them with a torrential killing intent. He had already learned that the Tiger Whale King was searching for the 2 oxen. However, he had discovered the Snow Leopard King of Mount Kunlun first. The forest in front was sparse, and the earth lacked vegetation. However, the essence of heaven and earth was still as dense as ever. This was a volcanic region. Many of the mountain passes were emitting black smoke, and some were even flowing with lava. Chu Feng spread out his powerful divine instincts as he chased for hundreds of kilometers. He quickly ran forward after hearing the tiger whale king's arrogant voice. A mere snow leopard isn't even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. How dare you bare your fangs and brandish your claws in front of me. Even your Mastiff King was stabbed by my spear and had his heart torn out. The Tiger Whale King was tall and sturdy. His black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were as large as bronze bells. He was like a demonic god as he stood in front of the volcano. "Speak, where are the 2 oxen? Otherwise, I'll stomp you to death." The Tiger Whale King looked down. The Snow Leopard King's body was covered in blood. He was currently in human form because one of his arms had been torn off. It would be difficult for him to run in his true form. Additionally, there was a corpse beside him. It was also a Beast King, but it had been trampled into a pile of meat paste. Traces of blood dyed the volcanic rocks red. The Snow Leopard King was in a desperate situation. He was incomparably indignant. The one who had died was a great demon king of Mount Kunlun who had a close relationship with him. However, he couldn't even withstand a single kick from the Tiger Whale King. The disparity between them and peerless experts was too great. The old llama will avenge us. Also, if you want to touch the 2 oxen, Demon King Chu will definitely appear and kill you. The Snow Leopard King threw caution to the wind. His silver hair was stained with blood, and his voice was gloomy and filled with anger. Chapter 287. The Tiger Whale King's voice was like thunder as it reverberated throughout the area, causing the nearby volcanoes to tremble slightly. This mountainous region was made up of hard volcanic rocks. Many of the active volcanoes were emitting dense black smoke. The smell of sulfur was very strong in the vicinity as fiery red lava flowed across the ground. Some areas were death zones for ordinary creatures. The Snow Leopard King's back was leaning against a huge rock. Half of his body was covered in blood. His right arm had been torn off by the Tiger Whale King. Not far away, fresh blood was flowing all over the ground. He was furious, but helpless. He was far from being the Tiger Whale King's opponent. The Kunlun Beast King, who was on good terms with him, had died in front of him. He had already tried his best to block it, but the price of an arm couldn't change anything. "Why are you silent? Do you think that old llama is very powerful? Even in a one-on-one fight, there are people who can behead him. As for that Chu Feng, let's just pray for him. If he really appears here, he'll suffer." The Tiger Whale King approached step by step, causing the rocky ground to tremble and crack. Not far away, hot air bubbles were bubbling up from the magma. Chu Feng had already heard the Tiger Whale King's voice. He was charging over from a distant volcano and gazing in this direction. The main reason was because the Tiger Whale King was ostentatious and tyrannical. His voice was like thunder and could spread for dozens of li. That was why Chu Feng was able to detect him immediately and rush over. Not too late. He stood on an extremely tall volcano and swept his gaze across the group of volcanoes until he saw that tall and sturdy figure. Chu Feng's sharp vision also saw the Snow Leopard King. He originally wanted to kill his way over directly, but now he could only approach stealthily out of fear that the Snow Leopard King would suddenly be killed. At the foot of the volcano, the Tiger Whale King strode forward. He was tall and had thick black hair. His eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning, and his body exuded a terrifying, evil aura. With a swoosh, he used his spiritual energy to connect the arm to his hand. He grinned evilly and said, "Tell me where the 2 oxen are, and I will return the arm to you. With your vigorous king-level blood chi, you can definitely connect them and grow them back. You don't have to ask. I've been separated from them for a long time. I don't even know where they are." The Snow Leopard King was very weak and didn't want to say more. "You don't want to tell me? I'll roast this arm here and eat it slowly. Don't regret it." The Killer Whale King laughed coldly. After saying this, he carried the bloody arm to the flowing lava and placed it on top of it to roast. Even though it was king-level flesh and blood, after all, it had already left the Snow Leopard King's body. There was still some distance between it and the lava, but it had already given off the smell of barbecued meat. The Snow Leopard King was seething with anger. The other party was slowly torturing him like this. This was a serious humiliation to him. If he had the power to fight, he would have chopped off the other party's head. "Oh, this arm hasn't been roasted yet. Although its activity has weakened, it can still be reattached. Choose for yourself. The killer whale king looked down at the snow leopard king with a tyrannical expression. F***CK off. The snow leopard king angrily rebuked. He was ready to fight with his life on the line. It didn't matter if he was killed. It was better than being humiliated like this. The tiger whale king wore a disdainful expression as he taunted. A beast king like you won't be enough to kill me, even if there were 10 more of you. You still dare to be angry at me? You don't know the difference between life and death. After saying this, he directly threw the arm into the nearby lava stream and prepared to destroy it. Meanwhile, he himself closed in and stretched out a large hand. He tyrannically grabbed the snow leopard king's neck as if he wanted to pick up a chick. He was extremely powerful. His body reeked of blood as he revealed a cruel smile and said, "From today onwards, I'll also make a gourmet ranking. I'll let that Chufeng comment on it. However, the ingredients are all from his acquaintances." The snow leopard king despaired. He exerted all his strength and propped up an energy barrier to block that large hand. In the end, the barrier was shattered by the pressure. It couldn't withstand the attack. Suddenly, a divine radiance appeared in his eyes. His pupils opened wide, as if he had seen the dawn of life in a hopeless situation. At the same time, a cold air soared from the tiger whale king's back. He left an afterimage in his original position and moved over 100 meters away. He didn't have the time to torture and kill the snow leopard king. His body was tall and sturdy, but he was extremely nimble. He evaded the attack of a scarlet flying sword. Chufeng. After the tiger whale king turned around, 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes. His long black hair fluttered in the wind as his murderous aura instantly overflowed the sky. He hadn't expected that the person he had always wanted to kill would suddenly appear nearby. Chufeng grabbed the snow leopard king's arm and didn't let it fall into the magma. At the critical moment, he used his spiritual martial arts to draw it into his hand. Moreover, he quickly attacked the tiger whale king and resolved the snow leopard king's crisis. "You really dare to appear." The tiger whale king's eyes emitted a torch-like light. The blood in his body surged and raised his battle power to the peak. Although he was tyrannical, he didn't dare to look down on this human. "I'll beat you up a while." Chufeng only said this because there was a flame of anger throbbing in his chest. He had seen and heard everything just now. If he wasn't worried about the snow leopard king's safety, he would have already attacked. Chufeng's figure flashed and arrived in front of the snow leopard king. He connected the arm to the tiger whale king's severed arm and said, "There's still some vitality left. It should still be able to grow back." The snow leopard king's eyes were filled with hot tears. It wasn't sadness but excitement. He was too sullen just now and wanted nothing more than to slap the tiger whale king to death with his claws. But he couldn't do it. If he were to die directly, he really wouldn't be able to swallow this anger. Seeing Chufeng appear, his blood boiled. He wanted to see Chufeng kill the savage tiger whale king with his own eyes. Chufeng, kill him. Use violence to curb violence. Beat him up. The snow leopard king roared. His heart was stifled. There was another pool of blood in front of him. That was his good friend, the great demon of Kunlun Mountain. He had been trampled to death by the tiger whale king with contempt and arrogance. "Leave it to me. Don't worry," Chufeng said. He then turned around and faced the tiger whale king. The snow leopard king was somewhat absent-minded. The first time he met Chufeng on Mount Kunlun, he had just entered the king level not long ago. At that time, the snow leopard king and the horse king were still chatting and joking. Both of them wanted to betroth their daughters to him. Who would have thought that Chufeng had grown so much in such a short time and could kill peerless experts on his own? "How do you want to die?" Chufeng stared at the tiger whale king. During this process, the tiger whale king didn't stay idle. He let out a long whistle and apparently summoned the marine race experts to kill Chufeng together. "You can't even protect yourself, yet you dare provoke me? I'll make you wish you were dead." The tiger whale king laughed coldly. He removed the black spear from his back and held it in his hand. He was fearless because he believed in his own strength. At the same time, he knew that there were at least 2 marine race experts with 6 severed shackles in the vicinity. There might even be 4 or 5. He had let out a long whistle just now and had already sent out a signal. "Why don't you tell me how you want to die?" The tiger whale king wore an indifferent smile and was full of confidence. He pointed the black spear in his hand at Chu Feng and said, "This spear once pierced through the Mastiff King's body and was stained with the blood of peerless experts." He wanted to stall for time and wait for his companions to arrive. Then, they would attack together to kill Chu Feng. That was because no matter who saw Chu Feng, they would feel that he was no different from an expert with 6 severed shackles. The blood energy and energy within his body were too vigorous and needed to be treated with caution. Chu Feng was quite cooperative. He didn't attack immediately and instead observed the surrounding terrain. He had already sized up the area not long ago and was now one step closer to confirm, following which he produced 4 dragon-locking pillars from his spatial bottle and hurled them out at lightning speed. The 4 pillars flew in 4 different directions and surrounded an area with a circumference of several kilometers. Even though the pillars were incomparably heavy, they were easily and accurately thrown by Chu Feng several kilometers away. They pierced into the soil and disappeared. Ghostly Labyrinth. He had laid down this small-scale domain. During these days, he had been comprehending the domain Heavenly Book in a Great Woods Temple. He had also studied and pondered over the ready-made dragon-locking pillars, and thus knew how to use them. The terrain of this volcanic area was undulating, and many areas were close to each other. It was easy for ordinary people to get lost after entering. Most importantly, there were geomagnetic anomalies. These conditions were extremely suitable for laying down a small-scale domain like Ghostly Labyrinth. The tiger whale king's expression changed. After seeing the 4 pillars, he immediately knew that they belonged to He Tong. "You called the marine race over to throw their lives away. I'll fulfill your wish. I'll kill as many as they come," Chu Feng said coldly. If too many experts came, Chu Feng would lure them to that area and kill them all. The tiger whale king's expression changed slightly. He had to warn the marine race experts not to step into that circle. He wanted to stall for time even more. "Brat, don't you want to know the situation of those 2 oxen? Oh, there's also your sworn brother, the donkey. I cut off its tail, and it's dripping with blood. How laughable. Do you want to know how it is now? You're courting death." Chu Feng believed that the 2 oxen and the donkey king were still alive. However, he had succeeded in inciting his fury. He had already laid down a small-scale domain, Ghostly Labyrinth. He didn't want to waste any more time because he didn't want to give the tiger whale king any more chances. With a rumble, Chu Feng pounced over at 5 times the speed of sound. His fists glowed as though 2 suns had exploded. "Everyone!" The tiger whale king roared loudly. He knew he couldn't stall for time and wanted to shout out that there was a dangerous area here with the dragon-locking pillars. However, Chu Feng roared and used the demon flood dragon roar. The sound waves shook the skies and suppressed the tiger whale king's voice. "Kill!" The tiger whale king was shocked and furious. The black spear in his hand erupted with black light like a venomous dragon as it stabbed toward Chu Feng. The black spear was extremely sharp and contained an astonishing amount of energy. At this moment, it was overflowing with killing intent and was enough to pierce through a mountain peak and shatter it. The tiger whale king was indeed powerful. His race's innate divine strength allowed him to be at the top of his level and easily split open a mountain. However, with a clang, Chu Feng's fist shone and smashed down with a tremendous force. It actually shook his arm until it was numb and shocked him. The tiger whale king was shaken. This human strength was simply too great. Although he was domineering, he didn't look down on Chu Feng. After all, this person had killed He Tong and thus made him incomparably cautious. But now he was shocked out of his wits. Even ordinary tiger whales possessed great strength, to say nothing of him. He had long since become a king, and there were few who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. He roared and brandished the black spear with all his might, thrusting it once again at Chu Feng. However, the current Chu Feng was much stronger than when he killed He Tong. That was because he had cultivated the complete Demon Flood Dragon Fist and fused it with the Demon Ox Fist, greatly increasing his combat strength. Moreover, he had cultivated the Shingy Fist Golden Bell Canopy to the 7th level. This was the embodiment of his explosive strength. Rumble. Chu Feng smashed the black spear away with his fists. Moreover, a golden bell appeared around his body and emitted a deafening sound. His violent charge caused the black spear to splatter with sparks and slide to the side. The Tiger Whale King's mouth was split open and dripping with blood. At this time, Chu Feng was incomparably tyrannical, and his combat strength had soared to the extreme. Boom! The radiance emitted by Chu Feng's fist illuminated everything within 100 meters. It was extremely dazzling and seemed to cause the entire world to tremble. The Tiger Whale King coughed up blood. He was truly unable to endure the injuries caused by Chu Feng's fist seal and the golden bell outside his body. With a clang, even the black spear in his hand was sent flying. How is this possible? He roared. He had once been to Mount Sanqing and observed the traces of battle there. Heitong had clearly fought a long battle with Chu Feng before dying. Moreover, he believed that he was stronger than Heitong and shouldn't have been injured so quickly. All of this was because Chu Feng had gone berserk and wanted to finish him off in the shortest time possible. Moreover, Chu Feng's strength had indeed increased by a large margin and was far superior to before. Rumble. The heavens and earth shook. When Chu Feng's glowing fist seal arrived once more, the Tiger Whale King couldn't dodge and could only cross his arms to meet the attack. That was because his spear had long since left his hand. With a bang, the Tiger Whale King was sent flying like a cannonball. He spat out large mouthfuls of blood, and his arms spasmed, one of which was directly fractured. Chu Feng was like a bolt of lightning. With his godly speed, he immediately caught up to the Tiger Whale King and swung his fist seal once more. The air rumbled. Chapter 288. Chu Feng's fists were too ferocious. Even the Tiger Whale King, who had prided himself on his sturdy body and peerless strength, couldn't bear it. One of his arms was directly blown off and turned into a bloody mist. The Tiger Whale King was sent flying for 2 li before crashing into a volcano with a bang. That place immediately cracked open, and with a boom, magma burst out from the dam and directly erupted. This scene was somewhat astonishing. The two fought at close quarters until the scarlet magma overflowed from the active volcano. It surged violently in the area and emitted dense black smoke. It was an extremely terrifying scene. Chu Feng, the Tiger Whale King's expression was pained. He let out a low roar like a cornered beast in despair. He had actually lost one of his arms. This was a serious setback for him. He soared up, distancing himself from the active volcano, and was about to escape. Although the Tiger Whale King was arrogant, he didn't want to die in vain. He clearly couldn't beat Chu Feng. If he were to fight to the death now, he would simply be courting death. I've come to kill you. You still want to leave? Chu Feng said coldly. He had moved later, but arrived first. With a boom, he crossed the vast sky and cut off the Tiger Whale King's path. The Tiger Whale King didn't say a word. He turned around and still wanted to leave this battlefield. He wanted to stall for time. As long as his companions arrived, they would be able to surround and kill Chu Feng. He had to endure for now. Unfortunately, he had encountered Chu Feng. It was difficult for him to escape. In terms of speed, the disparity between the two wasn't small. In terms of combat strength, there was already a clear difference. Now that one of the Tiger Whale King's arms had been broken, he was naturally in an even worse state. His whole body was covered in blood. Boom! This time, he suffered another heavy punch when Chu Feng caught up to him. Like a landslide or a tsunami, Chu Feng leapt up from behind and swooped down. He was 3 li away from the Tiger Whale King. He was simply like a deity descending to the mortal world. Chu Feng descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning. That fist of his was resplendent and overflowing with energy fluctuations that could be considered exceptionally terrifying. It could even cause the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers to lose their color. When he waved his fist, the ground was suppressed by the energy and cracked. The cracks quickly spread out and the lava began to boil. The Killer Whale King was unable to evade because a scarlet flying sword was fiercely shooting toward him as he fled to the east, wanting to pierce through him. He could only evade, which caused him to be blocked for a while, delaying his time. Dong! When Chu Feng's world-shocking punch landed, it was even more dazzling and resplendent than the sun, illuminating the entire volcanic region. This was an all-out attack that contained a vast amount of physical energy. Killer Whale desperately raised his left arm, his fist glowed, and a fist of extreme yang energy burst out, emitting a terrible radiance of energy, making people unable to look directly at it. Unfortunately, this terrifying fist that was enough to threaten exceptional experts, able to suppress kings, was completely useless at this moment. Puff! His fist exploded, unable to block Chu Feng's most powerful strike. Then his arm broke, then his shoulder blade broke into pieces, and finally his entire shoulder exploded. Chu Feng's punch was so powerful that it almost broke half of his body. Thump! The Killer Whale King was sent flying and crashed into an active volcano. Lava raged everywhere, and the smell of sulfur assaulted the nostrils. At this moment, he had lost his sharpness and was no longer as confident as before. That was because he had been beaten silly and disheartened. All of his high spirits had been completely shattered by Chu Feng's fist. The Killer Whale King came to and cried out in pain. Both of his arms had disappeared, and now Chu Feng had picked him up like a little chick. Boom! Several powerful energy fluctuations came from the distance like raging waves beating against the shore. The Killer Whale King's friends were about to arrive. In truth, the two hadn't even exchanged blows for a long time. Everything had happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. Those people had already arrived within such a short time because they were too powerful. All of them were marine race experts with 6 severed shackles and were traveling at supersonic speeds. The Killer Whale King's eyes were bursting with the desire to survive after seeing the light of hope. He opened his mouth and roared as silver ripples rushed out like ocean waves. He was burning his life force and releasing boundless blood energy to activate the unique sound waves of whales. He was still attacking madly, even after losing his arms for the sake of survival. Clang! 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 Unfortunately, the golden bell around Chu Feng's body was indestructible. If it were any other king at such a close distance, they would definitely be injured or even torn to pieces. But the golden bell canopy from the Xingyi 12 true forms could be considered a divine protective art. It allowed Chu Feng to be impervious to all attacks at this stage. Thump! Chu Feng's fist pierced through his chest and caused his heart to explode. Several figures appeared at the end of the earth, each more ferocious than the last. Some of them had disheveled hair, some were riding on scarlet light, and some were destroying volcanoes with a roar. The energy fluctuations they emitted had arrived from a great distance away. The 3 experts were roaring, but their speed was even faster than sound. Their figures had already appeared at the end of the horizon before anyone could even hear them. Chu Feng was very calm. He lifted the Killer Whale King's weak body and didn't immediately cut off his head. The safest way to deal with an expert of this level was to behead him. He stared at the terrain not far away, then suddenly leapt up and threw the Killer Whale King into the mouth of a volcano in midair. At this time, the Killer Whale King was too weak and directly transformed into his true form. This was a colossus the size of a small mountain. His whole body was drenched in blood, but he didn't struggle and rush straight toward the volcano. That volcano was huge, and scarlet magma gushed out from its mouth. "Go take a bath, mantis shrimp," Chu Feng said. With a rumble, magma splashed in all directions as a huge killer whale dived headfirst into the volcano. How was this a bath? It was clearly entering a hot pot to be cooked. The Killer Whale King's body was too huge. Half of his body had entered the volcano while the other half was outside, and he was powerlessly swinging his tail. This scene was completely unheard of. "You dare!" a bloodstained marine race expert with disheveled hair shouted. As he saw it, Chu Feng's attack in front of them was a provocation and a declaration of war. Unfortunately, the opponent couldn't hear his words. The air exploded as he charged over at a speed much faster than the speed of sound. His face was cold and sinister as he charged over to kill Chu Feng. "You're courting death. Let's kill him together." Another person spoke. His arms were a pair of large pincers. This was a crab king with 6 severed shackles. His face was filled with cruelty. There were traces of blood on their bodies, but it wasn't their own. It was all left behind by the experts they had hunted. The third marine race expert wasn't far away and was about to arrive. Chu Feng was very calm. He only raised his hand when they were about to reach the ghostly labyrinth. His fist erupted with a resplendent light. Boom! Chu Feng's charge pierced through the volcano like a bolt of lightning. His explosive power was simply too terrifying. He entered from one side of the volcano and came out from the other. At this time, the killer whale king was already on the verge of death because his heart had long since been crushed. If he had the strength, he wouldn't have been plunged into the lava like a head-on spring onion. Hence, he simply couldn't block this punch. Boom! Half of the killer whale king's body exploded along with the volcano. He had been directly killed. The other half of his tail rushed out from the surging lava. Without the protection of energy, it was immediately cooked and on the verge of being completely destroyed. Chu Feng rushed over and stood on the volcanic ground. His legs were like javelins that were nailed to the ground. He stared at the incoming group and even beckoned them over. The 3 marine race experts' eyes were cold. This was an unforgivable provocation. Killing the killer whale king in front of them was simply too arrogant. Swoosh, swoosh. The 3 who were originally about to flank Chu Feng immediately swooped down. They weren't willing to waste any time and wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Feng immediately. The 2 charging at the front were astonished because the volcano had turned upside down in an instant. This caused them to lose their sense of direction and directly fall to the ground. They had entered the ghostly labyrinth. The third person was alarmed and reacted quickly. As an expert with 6 severed shackles, his divine instincts were too sharp. He halted his steps after seeing that something was wrong with the other 2. But at this time, Chu Feng had already made his move. He circled around the ghostly labyrinth and rushed over at top speed. Thump, thump, thump. After several exchanges of fists, Chu Feng forced him into the ghostly labyrinth while the third person also fell into the miniature domain. Chu Feng had intentionally left the killer whale king until the last moment to draw the 3 experts to his rescue. They rushed over without any regard for the consequences, but in the end, they all fell into the ghostly labyrinth. Chu Feng wanted to test out the ghostly labyrinth's power. The best way to understand it was to trap experts with 6 severed shackles within and observe their struggles. At this moment, the 3 experts were completely bewildered. They ran with all their might, but were unable to escape. That was because this wasn't the ghostly labyrinth that ordinary people would encounter. This was a miniature domain specifically targeted at evolved beings. It targeted one's perception, divine instincts, and spirit. Trapped within the domain, one would always believe that one's judgment was correct, but in truth, it was ridiculously wrong. They would go in circles without end. Chu Feng revealed an odd expression. Taoist spiritual masters and Buddhist golden arhats. These powerful, ancient, evolved beings were indeed extraordinary. These were all things they had researched and possessed the power to deceive people's hearts. So what if it was a bodhisattva, a level evolved being? The domains they researched should be even more terrifying. Chu Feng didn't know whether the domain heavenly book he and Yellow Cattle had obtained contained the research experiences of bodhisattva level evolved beings. In the distance, the snow leopard king was dumbfounded and exceptionally shaken. Chu Feng, whose level of evolution wasn't even as high as his, had not only eliminated the killer whale king, but also trapped 3 experts. His strength had risen too quickly. The snow leopard king rushed over from several kilometers away. How unexpected. I thought you were going to fight a bitter battle. In the end, it ended just like that. The snow leopard king sighed. How's the mastiff king? Chu Feng asked. He felt that the snow leopard king would naturally come with the mastiff king, since they were both great demons of the Kunlun lineage. I don't know. The Snow Leopard King's voice was gloomy as he gave a simple account of what had happened. Both the marine race and land beast race experts were suppressed while climbing the mountain. Mount Longhu was targeted at the beast race, but after breaking through a stone tablet, the pressure below the mountainside disappeared. The marine race is ambitious and wants to destroy us. In truth, the Mastiff King and the others were also setting up a trap to kill the marine race experts. In the end, something went wrong, and we suffered great losses. The Snow Leopard King's cultivation wasn't high enough, and he didn't walk together with those peerless experts. He didn't know what had happened or what happened afterward. That was because it was a fight between peerless experts that they couldn't participate in. Chu Feng roughly understood the situation. The marine race had a great killing weapon, and it might be defectors on the land side. His gaze was intimidating. If there really were peerless experts colluding with the marine race, then the threat would be terrifying. If they turned against them at the last moment, they would immediately collapse. Chu Feng, who do you think you are? Fight me fair and square if you have the guts. I can destroy you with one hand. A rebuke came from within the ghostly labyrinth. Chu Feng's expression was relatively calm in the face of such provocation. He picked up the black spear the Killer Whale King had thrown on the ground and threw it with all his might. Puffed. Blood splashed out as the spear, blossoming with black light, pierced through the marine race expert's heart. It carried a large amount of blood and firmly nailed him to the ground. Chapter 289. Chu Feng observed for a while and found that a domain like the ghostly labyrinth could trap an expert with 6 severed shackles. This made him quite happy. If he could find a favorable terrain and bury the 4 bronze pillars, the effects would be astonishing. However, it wasn't easy to find a terrain suitable for laying down a ghostly labyrinth. It was impossible to satisfy every region. Chu Feng, we can actually talk things over. There's no need to become enemies. The Sea Crab King spoke from within the ghostly labyrinth. He was about to go crazy because, no matter what decision he made, he simply couldn't escape the domain. Chu Feng didn't refuse. Instead, he asked them about the yellow cattle, the mystery of the Wudong sect master's death, and whether the Mastiff King had really fallen. However, it was quite strange. The people within the domain could transmit their voices to the outside world, but they couldn't hear Chu Feng's words. One could imagine how powerful the interference on their divine instincts was. Puffed. Chu Feng shot out his flying knife without hesitation and cut off the head of the marine race expert nailed to the ground, ending his life. Next, he activated the flying knife and cut down another marine race expert, leaving only the Sea Crab King. Of course, this king had also been gravely injured and had almost lost all his combat strength. Both of his pincers had been cut off and fell to the ground. Only at this time did Chu Feng pull up the 4 pillars and put them into the spatial bottle. The Sea Crab King turned to flee after regaining his freedom. Even though he had lost his pincers, he was still running frantically in a bid to escape. Chu Feng was somewhat speechless. Why was this fellow running horizontally in human form? Was it a habit? He started running and chased after him. Thump! The Sea Crab King was sent flying by Chu Feng's heavy punch. He immediately reverted to his true form, a crab the size of a small mountain. He had never seen such a thing before. In the end, this crab wasn't subdued. It was fairly unyielding. Its whole body erupted with light and finally exploded with a bang. The energy contained within its body erupted with boundless terror and was even more astonishing than the eruption of a volcano. It wanted to drag Chu Feng down with it and perish together. Chu Feng had long moved out of the way. He was astonished that this crab had such integrity. He had a whole new level of respect for it. I'm General Crab of the Southern Sea's Black Dragon Palace. If I die here today, the Southern Sea Dragon King will definitely avenge me in the future. You won't be able to live either. The Sea Crab King roared, its final spiritual body disintegrating. The legendary shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Chu Feng mumbled in a low voice. It was really strange. The Snow Leopard King was speechless for a long time. He just stood there and watched. These were 4 great experts, and they were all dead. Chu Feng had killed them all by himself. The battle results were truly terrifying. These were all top-notch ingredients, but Chu Feng was not in the mood to collect them. Saving people was more important, and he was afraid that something would happen to Yellow Cattle and the others. The Snow Leopard King told Chu Feng that he had met the Yellow Cattle and the Black Yak. The two oxen were indeed injured, but their lives were not in danger. The Snow Leopard King guessed that the two oxen hadn't charged into the depths of this space. Relatively speaking, they were still in the periphery. There were peerless experts slaughtering in the depths. Snow Leopard King, you should quickly withdraw from this space, said Chu Feng. This place was too dangerous. If he wasn't strong enough, he would only die in vain. The Snow Leopard King nodded and said, I should be able to leave now. He walked towards the corpses and searched for the calabash seed on them. Chu Feng was astonished and somewhat puzzled. You also entered this place through the hole in the sky above the calabash vine, right? Asked the Snow Leopard King. Yes, it's easy to come up, but difficult to go down. We need the calabash seed. The hole in the sky is filled with a mysterious power that prevents us from returning. According to him, the marine race's harvest in Mount Longhu wasn't small. They might have obtained some powerful ancient weapons, including a shriveled yellow calabash. In the end, the Snow Leopard King left with a sparkling and translucent calabash seed. Chu Feng set out once again. He had learned a lot from his conversation with the Snow Leopard King just now. The marine race's great weapons were obtained from this place and were in the hands of important characters. He needed to be vigilant. He needed to be doubly careful if he were to run into them. Along the way, Chu Feng discovered that some mutant trees had been plucked clean. Chu Feng's heart was moved. Perhaps there was a fruit in the depths of this space that could allow a supreme king to evolve once again. His heart burned with passion. Perhaps there was an astonishing enough soil to allow the seed in the stone box to sprout once more. He searched carefully in hopes of receiving the Yellow Cattle's group. He searched for a long time in the periphery, but found nothing. In the end, he set out towards the depths. It had to be said that this space was truly vast. He had gone several hundred kilometers in, but was still far from the end. Finally, after traveling several hundred kilometers, Chu Feng found some donkey hoof prints left behind by the Donkey King. It seemed the donkey was fleeing and being chased. Doubtlessly, the spineless donkey was in a miserable state. Even his tail had been cut in half. Chu Feng continued his pursuit. This place had long since left the volcanic region. The forest was dense and full of vitality. Before long, Chu Feng found yet another bloody hoof print. It seemed the old donkey's situation wasn't good. He had been injured again. Chu Feng had already learned from the Snow Leopard King that the Donkey King wasn't with the Yellow Cattle's group. They had already been separated. The old donkey relied on his extreme speed and wasn't any slower than experts with 6 severed shackles. It could be said that he had narrowly escaped several calamities. Let's save the old donkey first. Since he had found traces, Chu Feng naturally had to take action. He chased all the way into the depths of the mountain range and finally found something. That was because he could hear the old donkey's cries from afar. Hee-haw, hee-haw. Chu Feng was first astonished and then speechless. The old donkey was still taking advantage of others under such circumstances? Boom! Chu Feng increased his speed, blasting apart the rocks and vegetation along the way. He was like a tyrannosaurus in human form as he tore through the mountain range with ease. 10 kilometers passed in the blink of an eye, and he arrived at a mountain forest. He discovered the marine race and also heard the Donkey King's curses. He was being surrounded and couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. Hee-haw, hee-haw, you country bumpkins of the sea. Do you know who this king's little brother is? Chu Feng, Demon King Chu. You dare harm Grandpa Donkey? My little brother will definitely teach you a lesson when he arrives and stew you all into seafood porridge. Chu Feng could hear the Donkey King's threats from a certain distance. He was challenging the marine race. This dumbfounded him. When did this spineless donkey become so unyielding? At the same time, black lines appeared on his forehead. This old donkey was quite bold. He even dared to call him his little brother. Donkey, if the white shark didn't order us to capture you alive and use you and the 2 oxen to lure Chu Feng here. You would have died long ago. A marine race expert shouted. That damn great white shark. If I had severed my 6th shackle, I would have kicked him to death. The Donkey King cried out, following which he let out a miserable groan. Apparently, he had been injured. Boom! Chu Feng didn't waste any time. He tore through the air and leapt 1,500 meters away. His body crashed into the forest with a bang, shattering the trees. There were 4 marine race experts at the scene. They weren't experts with 6 severed shackles, but they weren't weak either. At the very least, they were enough to deal with the Donkey King and surround him. At this time, both the marine race experts and the Donkey King were shocked out of their wits and glanced over. You! The Donkey King cried out oddly. He was truly pleasantly surprised. At first, he wanted to take a few blows and break out of the encirclement. Who would have thought that Chu Feng would suddenly descend from the sky? This, to the Donkey King, was truly a pleasant surprise. Peerless Demon King Chu, I've waited day and night. You finally arrived. The old donkey's words changed quickly. How would he dare mention the words, little brother? He felt somewhat guilty and was afraid that Chu Feng would hear him. Chu Feng had taught him a lesson, but he didn't reprimand him after seeing the injuries all over his body. His tail had been chopped off, and there was a cross-shaped wound on his, but that was still dripping with blood. This old donkey was too miserable. Fortunately, his life wasn't in danger. Are you all right? Chu Feng asked. I'm fine. I've been bullied quite badly, especially by that great white shark and the killer whale. I really want to stomp them to death. The Donkey King was almost in tears. Thump, thump, thump. Chu Feng took action because the marine race experts wanted to escape. In the end, they were all killed. The Donkey King sighed. He had no choice but to admit defeat. The Beast Kings that had chased him to the brink of death were like scarecrows before Chu Feng. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. I've slaughtered the tiger shark. Where's the great white shark? Really? That's great. That bastard tiger shark injured my tail. It's good that he's dead. The Donkey King was delighted. Chu Feng knew who that great white shark was. Before entering the mysterious space, he had seen a white-haired man on Mount Longhu with a blood-dripping saber in his hand. The people at the foot of the mountain said that this person had participated in the encirclement of the Wudong Grandmaster. He had left a terrifying wound on the Grandmaster's back and gravely injured him. Follow me. I know where the white shark is, the Donkey King said. You're actually so stubborn this time. You didn't surrender? Chu Feng looked at the donkey in astonishment. I wanted to surrender. As the saying goes, living a bad life is better than dying a good death. But these bastards were too arrogant and refused to accept my request. I could only run away, the old donkey said in all seriousness. Chu Feng was speechless. This fellow's skin was quite thick. He didn't even try to hide or beautify himself and directly revealed his disgraceful deeds. Where's Yellow Cattle and the others? Chu Feng asked as they hurried along. They used the golden Arhut talisman to kill a peerless expert. We were separated during the process of breaking out of the encirclement. I don't know where they are, either. Chu Feng was astonished. Yellow Cattle and the others had actually killed a peerless king-level expert. The Donkey King said, I reckon they found a place to hide. They want to rely on their own strength to sever their shackles and become peerless experts to fight against the marine race. Chu Feng frowned. The 2 oxen were in a bad situation. He knew very well that it was too difficult for the black yak to rely on his own strength to sever his shackles. Yellow Cattle could be considered a heavenly genius and was supported by a peerless breathing technique. However, he was too young and had hesitated before. His blood energy wasn't that vigorous and wasn't suitable for a tyrannical breakthrough. That was because he was still considered a child in the outer realms. He should be consolidating his foundation and not trying to break through while injuring his muscles and bones. Great White Shark, your Grandpa Donkey is here again. Come and receive me, the Donkey King shouted. Chapter 290. Peerless No, one replied. The place was very quiet. The nearby mountains were shattered and stained with blood. Some of the mountain peaks had been shaved off after a great battle, and the cuts were extremely smooth. This was the result of a great battle between peerless experts. White hair, this grandpa is here again. Come out if you have the guts. I'll beat you to death. The Donkey King hooted, with Chu Feng standing behind him. The Donkey King was extraordinarily daring. He challenged without any misgivings because he hated the White Shark King to the core and had tortured him quite badly. There were many blood-stained leaves on the ground, but there were no longer any experts left. Lead the way to them, said Chu Feng. Fine. I won't be able to vent my anger if I don't kill the white shark. The Donkey King nodded in agreement. It was rare that he wasn't afraid and wanted to escape. The Donkey King knew that the group of experts with 6 severed shackles had killed their way into the depths of the mysterious space. As long as they followed the traces of the battle, they would definitely be able to find them. He guessed that the White Shark King might have given up on searching after failing to find the 2 oxen. The strongest experts of the marine race have great killing weapons. The Donkey King reminded Chu Feng because he had learned along the way that Chu Feng was going to kill his way in alone. Among them, the sea god tiger was the most terrifying. That golden-haired man had once caused great trouble to the peerless experts of the continent. The yellow cattle had used up an entire golden Arhut talisman, but still failed to kill him. One of the black yak's horns had been chopped off by the sea god tiger, and the 2 oxen had almost died in his hands. Apart from that, there was also an octopus king that was as large as a mountain peak. He had once torn apart a mountain ridge to draw out lava and used it to kill his opponents. An octopus bathed in lava had once joined hands with others to injure the white crane of the Sword Palace. Unfortunately, the Donkey King didn't know much. Apart from the peerless experts who have escaped into the depths of this space, are there any others? Chu Feng inquired. The Donkey King nodded. Not long ago, he had seen a number of great demons from Mount Kunlun and many king-level entities from Jiangxi. Where are they? Chu Feng was more concerned about the great demons of Mount Kunlun. Many of them had friendly relations with him, so after learning of the situation, he naturally wanted to help. The Donkey King replied, People like us who haven't severed 6 shackles can only hide here and there. We don't dare reveal ourselves and are scattered in all directions. Chu Feng and the others were very fast. In a very short time, they had rushed out more than 200 kilometers. At this time, they slowed down. This area was a little special. It was a stretch of hills that resembled giant tombstones. Plants were sparse here and there. Not to mention Chu Feng. Even the Donkey King's heart was moved. His nose twitched because he smelled the refreshing fragrance of fruits. Mutant fruit. The Donkey King became spirited. This kind of fragrance was simply too alluring. It had drifted over from afar and was definitely extraordinary. Chu Feng was also in high spirits, feeling a bit expectant. He felt that this fruit should be extraordinary, and even though he didn't want to eat it himself, he could give it to the people around him. After advancing for several hundred meters, they still hadn't found their target. The Donkey King became even more excited. He reckoned that this fruit could allow an entity to evolve to the king level at the very least. That was because the fragrance was able to drift so far. It was definitely extraordinary. This place suppresses divine instincts. It's a bit odd. Chu Feng frowned. He suddenly raised his head. There seemed to be an expert here. He told the Donkey King to keep quiet. There were countless hills in this area, and there were natural domains here. However, they could only interfere with one's divine instincts and weren't that terrifying. At the very least, they were far inferior to the ghostly labyrinth Chu Feng had laid down with his 4 bronze pillars. Chu Feng and the Donkey King turned left and right as the scenery before them suddenly changed. A forest appeared behind a huge hill, and the fragrance was drifting over from there. White hair! The Donkey King gnashed his teeth and stared ahead with an unfriendly expression. A white-haired young man was searching through the forest with a blood-stained longsword in his hand. This place was indeed odd. He had only discovered the other party at such a close distance. It was clear that the interference from the domains was quite powerful. The White Shark King had entered the depths of the forest and could no longer be seen. He has indeed entered the depths of space. "We've chased in the right direction," said the Donkey King. He was quite bold at the moment and had no intention of escaping. Chu Feng didn't dare be careless. This White Shark King wasn't simple at all. He already knew that the latter had dealt a sharp blow to the Wudong sect master back when they were ascending Mount Longhu. There was a strange tree in the depths of the forest. It was made of stone and felt no different from stone whether one touched or struck it. Even its leaves were cold and hard. They wouldn't sway even when the wind blew against them. It was no different from a stone sculpture. But now, there was a fruit growing on this human-sized tree. It was gray and similar to the tree itself, but it was emitting a dense fragrance. It was precisely this fruit's fragrance that had spread far and wide and attracted the White Shark King. A number of people had already arrived here and were trying to pluck the fruit from the stone tree. However, none of them had succeeded. That was because there seemed to be a layer of invisible energy around the stone tree that prevented living beings from approaching. Upon closer inspection, there were some strange runes on the ground. Those were domain characters, and it was precisely these runes that prevented outsiders from entering. But with the passage of time, the ground here had cracked and the runes had suffered serious damage. Almost all of them had been pierced through by cracks. It was easy to imagine that if they were intact, there would be no way to approach this place. The great demons of Mount Kunlun were all familiar faces to Chu Feng. There was the Weaver King from the Silken Cave, the Horse King who wanted to marry his daughter to Chu Feng, and the Antelope King whose horn had been broken by Chu Feng. They had finally approached the stone tree after numerous attempts and were about to touch it. Ha ha! It was at this time that a heart-chilling laughter rang out. They turned back to see the marine race expert they were most unwilling to see. White Shark King. The Horse King drew in a breath of cold air. That was because they had personally witnessed how terrifying the White Shark King's blade techniques were. This was a true, peerless expert who was rarely matched, even among those with 6 severed shackles. The blade in his hand had once left a bone-deep wound on the Wudong Grandmaster's back. It was precisely that blade that had plunged the old Grandmaster into a life-and-death crisis. Of course, the old Grandmaster was also injured because the Octopus King had been harassing him and attacking him fiercely. "All of you scram," the White Shark King said indifferently. He looked quite young and had a lazy appearance. He didn't place the great demons of Mount Kunlun in his eyes at all. At this time, the Horse King and the Weaver King were finally about to touch the fruit after much difficulty. However, they had encountered the White Shark King. This caused their hearts to sink. They had rushed here to seek refuge, but now their hearts had turned cold because a single fruit had attracted a great enemy. The White Shark King said casually, "Scram to the side. I'll deal with you guys after I'm done picking the fruit. Are you guys deaf?" He swung his blade forward with a swoosh. He didn't use any force, but his blade energy swept out in all directions and almost tore the void apart. The Horse King and the Weaver King quickly evaded. This kind of blade radiance wasn't something they could resist. Even though they didn't clash head-on, they still ended up coughing up large mouthfuls of blood. Their bodies had almost exploded upon contact with the white energy. "They're just a bunch of bugs. I didn't even bother to deal with them," the White Shark King said lazily. He was very powerful, and the formless energy couldn't stop him. He had already approached the stone tree. "I'll let anyone tell me where the 2 oxen are. Otherwise, I'll still kill you guys even though I don't care." The White Shark King had a faint smile on his young face. He looked lazy, but no one dared to look down on him. He was a well-known figure among the marine race. "It's a pity that my master isn't here," the Horse King muttered. He could already tell that only an invincible character like the old llama could kill the top figures of the marine race. "Your master is nothing. Most of the creatures on the continent can be killed with a single slash." The White Shark King had a mocking expression on his face. At the same time, he raised his blade and said, "Originally, I couldn't be bothered to deal with small fries like you and those 2 oxen. But since the Clam Fairy has asked me to attack, you guys can only die." He raised his hand and his long blade glowed as he prepared to sweep across. That was because he didn't have much patience. He was prepared to kill them all since they didn't want to tell him where the 2 oxen were. Boom! Suddenly, violent energy surged over. The White Shark King turned around, and his pupils constricted. It was a black spear which had transformed into a beam of black light. It arrived in an instant like a shocking bolt of lightning. If he hadn't reacted quickly enough, he would have been pierced through. At the same time, he saw the attacker standing in the distance. He was very young and had directly thrown the black spear. Clang! The White Shark King waved his blade fiercely and sent the spear flying. Swoosh! In the distance, the young man waved his hand and used his spiritual energy to catch the black spear and hold it in his hand once again. "Brother Chu!" the Horse King shouted. The Weaver King was also pleasantly surprised. They hadn't expected Chu Feng to appear at such a juncture. This was simply a stairway to life in a hopeless situation that would allow them to escape the maelstrom of death. Hee-haw! Hee-haw! Your grandfather is here again. Come and accept your death. The Donkey King appeared with a swoosh. He jumped to Chu Feng's side and challenged the White Shark King. "This black spear belongs to the Killer Whale King. Did you kill him?" The White Shark King put away his mischievous attitude and became serious. "Horse King, Weaver King, you guys hide a little further away." Chu Feng indicated. He then stared at the White Shark King and said, "It's just a killer whale. The sooner he dies, the sooner he can reincarnate. It's your turn now. Where's the clam fairy?" The White Shark King asked. "I killed her with one punch," replied Chu Feng. "I'll kill you." The White Shark King was furious. His temperament was completely different from before. His eyes were as sharp as blades as he raised his dazzling blade and aimed it at Chu Feng. The Donkey King challenged. "Hee-haw, hee-haw, so it turns out you like the clam fairy? Damn it. There's no cure for this forbidden love between races. This king will go stew her and eat her later." Boom! The White Shark King took action. He transformed into a beam of white light and rushed over. That terrifying blade energy tore through the earth and created a vast expanse of whiteness. The Donkey King was so frightened that he turned around and ran. Chu Feng was fearless as he stood there. The black spear in his hand pierced forth like a bolt of black lightning. Clang! 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 Sparks flew in all directions as killing intent surged into the sky. This was the first battle Chu Feng had experienced in mysterious space that was worthy of his attention. The White Shark King was extremely powerful and even surpassed the Killer Whale King. They had exchanged hundreds of blows within a short period of time. The boundless blade radiance resembled thousands of snow-white waves crashing over. Anyone who came into contact with it would be hacked to death. Chi! 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 Beam after beam of snow-white blade radiance flew out. In just a short period of time, they had fought their way out of the forest and into the hills. Boom! Before long, more than 10 hills had been cleaved apart. They were more like small mountains than hills. The White Shark King's blade radiance was peerless and could cleave apart a small mountain with a single slash. Although this was Chu Feng's first time using the black spear, he was fairly proficient with it. That was because the black spear in his hand was an extension of the demon flood dragon fist. It transformed into a black flood dragon that flew up and down, clashing with the long saber and stabbing at the White Shark King's vital from time to time. At their level, any attack was extremely terrifying and deadly even with or without a weapon. Bang! The White Shark King evaded Chu Feng's spear thrust. The tip of the spear pierced into a small mountain behind him and directly caused it to collapse, sending rubble flying through the air. The two exchanged over 200 moves before Chu Feng's spear pierced through the White Shark King's right shoulder with a puff sound, causing the latter's entire arm and long saber to fall to the ground. "You killed the Wudong Old Grandmaster, so I'll avenge him," shouted Chu Feng. At the same time, he interrogated the White Shark King about whether the Old Grandmaster and the others were still alive. "The experts on the continent are all dead. It won't be long before you die as well." The White Shark King's eyes emitted an ominous glint. He wasn't afraid of death. In the end, Chu Feng's spear pierced through the White Shark King's chest and lifted him into the air. Then, With a violent shake, the White Shark King's body was torn into pieces with a bang. He was completely dead. The Horse King, Weaver King, and the others were shocked. They quickly rushed over with complicated expressions. It had only been a short time since they last met, but Chu Feng had become so powerful. "Do you know where the yellow cattle are?" asked Chu Feng. "Yes." The Horse King nodded heavily. Chu Feng was overjoyed. For the fastest and error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 291. Meeting again. Prior to this, Chu Feng had always been worried. He had already heard from the Donkey King that yellow cattle wanted to forcefully break through. This caused him to feel extremely uneasy. That was because yellow cattle looked crafty and two-faced, but he was, in fact, just a child. His bones and blood energy hadn't fully developed. This kind of action of relying on himself to sever his shackles might cause him great harm. Even in the outer realms and the most glorious great worlds, the successors nurtured by the various holy lands wouldn't dare act so rashly at such a young age. Yellow cattle don't act recklessly. Chu Feng prayed in his heart, hoping that yellow cattle wouldn't take such a risk. He knew the situation was dire. Yellow cattle and the black yak had no choice but to cut off their means of retreat. A fragrance assailed the nostrils. The fruit on the stone tree had long since ripened. It looked gray and no different from a stone, but after ripening to the extreme, cracks began to appear on the stone fruit, revealing the bright red flesh within. What kind of fruit was this? No one present had ever seen a stone bear fruit. It was quite a rare sight. Chu Feng wasn't afraid of the invisible pressure. He directly walked over and plucked the fruit, handing it to the Horse King and the Weaver King. Although these people had seen many strange flowers and fruits on Mount Kunlun, they had never seen a stone fruit before. The great demons of Mount Kunlun were too embarrassed to accept this fruit. If not for Chu Feng's group, they would have been killed by the white shark alone. Chu Feng didn't hold back after seeing this and finally put away the fruit. The white shark had transformed into his gigantic true form. His broken body was piled up like a small mountain, dripping with fresh blood. Chu Feng glanced at the runes under the stone tree and pondered for a moment. He even dug up the area, but found nothing out of the ordinary. "Let's go." He wanted to go and receive Yellow Cattle's group. The Horse King and the others led the way. They had seen Yellow Cattle's group in a valley before, but it was unknown whether they had left. By the time they arrived at the valley, Chu Feng was disappointed because Yellow Cattle's group had long since left. "It looks like they've retreated." Chu Feng frowned. The oceanic race is determined to catch Yellow Cattle and the others, the Horse King informed. They could clearly sense that the ones chasing them were just normal kings. Meanwhile, the ones chasing after Yellow Cattle and the others were terrifying characters like the White Shark King and the Killer Whale King with 6 severed shackles. You killed Heitung and offended the South Seas royal family. So many peak-level kings have come out to capture Yellow Cattle and lure you to rescue them, said Weaver King of Mount Kunlun's Silken Web Cave. Chu Feng nodded. It was a fact that the sea race had chased after the 2 oxen because of him. However, since he had come here and his strength had improved greatly, he couldn't allow these people to act so insolently. He had to find Yellow Cattle and the others as soon as possible. "We have to be careful. We suspect that a marine race expert with 7 severed shackles has appeared. Otherwise, how could those fierce continental experts have suffered such serious injuries?" The Horse King reminded. He was over 3 meters tall and had a shiny bald head. He looked big and burly, but there was also finesse in his roughness. "It's very likely." The Weaver King nodded. She was clad in palace attire and was in a rather sorry state. She was covered in blood and would have died if Chu Feng hadn't arrived in time. Chu Feng's expression was solemn. An expert with 7 severed shackles had appeared. This would definitely be terrifying. Of course, this wasn't necessarily true. After all, it was only a suspicion. Neither the Donkey King nor the Weaver King had actually seen it. "I hope there's an astonishing mutant soil in this space." Chu Feng was looking forward to it. If he could sever his 6th shackle, he would have nothing to fear even if a terrifying marine race expert were to appear. Chu Feng passed a number of sparkling calabash seeds to the Horse King, Weaver King, and the others, telling them to leave. Now that all the peak-level experts have been cleared out, it was the best time to leave this space. This mysterious space was a battlefield for peerless experts. It would be easy for others to die here. Brother Chu, you must be careful. I hope we can drink to our heart's content at Mount Kunlun in the near future, said the Horse King. Don't worry, we'll leave immediately and invite the old llama to support you, said the Weaver King. In their hearts, the old llama was an invincible existence. Very well, you guys be careful too, Chu Feng warned. Even though he had cleared out the rear, he still needed to be cautious. What about me? The Donkey King was anxious and wanted to escape. He had always been a coward and didn't want to stay here any longer. This was especially true after the Tiger Whale King, who had chopped off his tail, and the White Shark King, who had been chasing after him, were both dead. He was even more unwilling to stay here any longer. You're fast enough to be on par with a king-level expert with 6 severed shackles. Come with me to search for Yellow Cattle and the others. Chu Feng left the Donkey King behind without any trace of politeness. Son, the Donkey King cried out in anger. But after seeing Chu Feng's unkind expression, he hurriedly changed his voice to vent his dissatisfaction. Moo moo woof woof, why? I'm just a dish here. I'll be killed if I'm not careful. It's fine as long as you don't stray too far from me, Chu Feng said. He had a certain degree of confidence. If push came to shove the Donkey King into the spatial bottle, he would protect Zhou Quan. In the end, the old donkey lowered his head and set off in low spirits. Be more attentive and find Yellow Cattle and the others as soon as possible. You can also leave as soon as possible, Chu Feng warned. They split up and expanded the search area. Chu Feng didn't even hesitate to let out a long whistle. He was fearless even if it attracted powerful enemies. All he wanted was to find Yellow Cattle as soon as possible. Unfortunately, they didn't find the 2 oxen in the end. The Donkey King also ran over to meet up with him. I think there's a possibility. They might be taking a risk and chasing after the group of peerless experts in the depths of this space. The so-called most dangerous area is also the safest. The Donkey King suddenly raised this idea. Are you sure? Chu Feng was suspicious. I'm an escape expert and value my life the most. According to my understanding of the Manchurian Tiger and Old Black, they'll probably make the same choice. That's because geniuses always think alike. Geniuses with just you two? Being greedy for life and having no moral integrity, they're quite similar in this aspect. Although Chu Feng said this, he also guessed that the 2 oxen might really have chased into the depths of this space to the most dangerous area. That was because the White Shark King and the Killer Whale King were hunting them in the outer regions. Relatively speaking, the depths of this mysterious space were much safer. The other marine race's targets weren't Yellow Cattle and the others. In the depths of space, 800 kilometers away, Yellow Cattle was sitting cross-legged within a mountain valley. His clothes were tattered and stained with blood. His little face was flushed red, and his blood energy was rising from his head. The energy within his body was surging like a mountain flood on the verge of bursting its banks. The Black Yak was somewhat anxious. He paced back and forth, acting as Yellow Cattle's protector. At this time, the Black Yak was in a miserable state. One of his horns had been broken, and there were many wounds on his body. He felt uneasy because he had been forced into a corner. They were being hunted down continuously and had almost died several times. Even if they were to take the risk and enter the depths of space to shake off the White Shark King and the others, they would still be in great danger. They would be discovered by the other marine race experts if they were slightly careless. Although the marine race experts in the depths of space wouldn't specifically hunt them down, they would still have to take action if they encountered them. And those who had come here were all top-grade kings. Not long ago, the Manchurian Tiger had risked his life to lure away 2 marine race experts with 6 severed shackles in order to allow Yellow Cattle to enter secluded cultivation peacefully. This time, the Manchurian Tiger was quite generous. He didn't betray them and even risked his life. Roar! The Manchurian tiger's furious roar came from several kilometers away. Apparently, he had encountered great trouble and was engaged in a fierce battle. God damn it, this daddy will fight it out with you, the black yak muttered. He grabbed his Buddhist staff and walked out of the valley in large strides to support the Manchurian tiger. He turned back to glance at the dispirited golden condor and said, "Protect calf, you little bastard." In truth, the golden condor was also in a miserable state. His wings had almost been torn off, and he couldn't fly anymore. He couldn't forget how terrifying the sea god tiger was when he spread his wings and almost slapped him down with a single slap. His killing intent surged to the sky, and he was incomparably brave and fierce. If yellow cattle hadn't used the golden Arhut talisman at the critical moment, they would have all died. However, the black yak's expression changed after rushing several kilometers out of the valley. The sounds of intense fighting were coming from the distance and approaching this area. Oh no! He revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. The marine race experts were fighting with the continental experts, and some people had arrived nearby. And now, yellow cattle couldn't move at all. He was at a critical moment of seclusion because he was still young and his blood energy wasn't as vigorous. He needed to go all out and couldn't be distracted. How come those peerless experts who had killed their way into the depths of space had come out again? The black yak was furious. Brother Tiger, hold on, and hopefully you can escape. I have to stay here and protect yellow cattle. The black yak held the Buddhist staff in his hand and stayed behind. He hid in the forest, ready to attack at any moment. Very soon his heart turned cold. This time, there were 4 or 5 people attacking. One was a ferocious sea hawk spreading its wings and chasing a white crane into the distance. Additionally, there was a seagull cooperating with it. Its body was enormous and even more terrifying than a fighter jet. It broke through the sound barrier and emitted continuous explosions as it suppressed the white crane. And on the ground, there were 2 human-shaped marine race experts leaping up from time to time to attack the white crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace. God damn it, so many marine race experts. The black yak was truly in despair. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains swayed. In the distance, a large white snake covered in blood was also retreating in defeat. This was the white snake from Mount Taiyang. Its body had once been severed and had been forcibly reattached. Now, it hadn't fully recovered and was being chased by the 2 human-shaped marine race experts. How can we be so unlucky? The black yak's face had turned green from despair to despair. This kind of situation was completely over. There was simply no way to block them. If these people were to kill their way into the mountain valley, the yellow cattle would definitely be attacked. But now, the little fellow's blood energy was surging and he was fighting with all his might. He wanted to sever the shackles in his body and break through to the critical juncture. Boom! In the air, the white crane suffered a heavy blow. Its feathers were sent flying as it crashed into the mountainous terrain. It fell down, its body covered in blood. It had long since been wounded by a powerful killing weapon. Now it was besieged and couldn't hold on any longer. There's a fish in a mountain valley that slipped through the net. The marine race experts who had chased them here were extremely sharp. This was especially true for the yellow cattle. He was in the midst of breaking through and couldn't conceal his aura, so he was discovered immediately. A marine race expert in human form laughed loudly and was about to charge and to kill. God damn it, Grandpa Yak will fight it out with you. The black yak roared. He jumped out with the Buddhist chant in his hand and his entire body lit up. The Buddhist chant became even more resplendent. Boom! He swept away the army of 1,000 and attacked the marine race experts. In the distance, Chu Feng could see the glaring light even from far away. He could vaguely see a golden Arhut appear in the mountain forest. Boom! The mountain forest exploded. Chu Feng sped up and charged over immediately because he knew what it was. The black yak and the others were using the Buddhist staff to fight with their lives on the line. As he neared, he saw the black yak flying out with blood flowing out of his mouth and nose. The staff had fallen out of his hand. What situation was this? There were actually so many marine race experts. Chu Feng was astonished. You're all courting death. Chu Feng shouted. With a single leap, he covered a distance of 1.5 kilometers. For the fastest novel reading, please visit Chapter 292. The woodland nearby exploded. Chu Feng traversed 1,500 meters in the air and landed on the ground. Like a landslide and tsunami, the ground, rocks, and giant trees all exploded into pieces, forming a huge wave of earth and rock that surged in all directions. He didn't look like a slender man with a delicate face. Instead, he looked like a missile that was about to raze the forest to the ground. The main reason was that his speed was too fast and his body was strong and durable. Chu Feng was excited because he had seen the black yak's miserable state. He rushed over with great speed. Not far away, the black yak was not only bleeding from his nose and mouth, but also from his eyes and ears. His Buddhist staff had been sent flying. He had used all his strength to launch an attack, which had gravely wounded a marine race expert. However, he had been drained of energy and was attacked by the marine race expert. Now the black yak looked miserable. One of his horns had been broken, and his body was covered in wounds and stains of blood. The black yak was shocked to see Chu Feng suddenly land. Then, he revealed an expression of incomparable joy. He hadn't expected him to rush over and kill his way here. At first, he had thought that the odds were against him and that he would die here. At this time, half of the marine race expert's body was almost rotting. He had been hit by the Buddhist staff's energy just now and simply couldn't block it. At the critical moment, he quickly moved to the side and dodged. Otherwise, he would most likely be beaten to a pulp. The marine race expert's hair was disheveled. He was determined to obtain the Buddhist staff. Just now, he had slapped the black yak from afar, causing him to bleed from his 7 orifices. In truth, the other marine race experts were also staring at him with blazing eyes. They moved together to snatch this great killing weapon. Scram! Chu Feng shouted after landing and attacked at the same time. However, the marine race expert who had been wounded by the Buddhist staff was very decisive. He moved quickly and pounced forward, wanting to snatch the Buddhist staff before everyone else. The black yak's expression changed. He was powerless all over and lay limp on the mountainous ground with blood dripping down. The black yak was unwilling. Even Chu Feng had arrived. It would be too unjust if the marine race expert snatched away his weapon. The Buddhist staff was not far from the black yak after it left his hand, but he was unable to move. As expected, this marine race expert rushed over. Not only did he want to grab the Buddhist staff, but he also wanted to deal another blow to the black yak and thoroughly kill him. Chi! The red mist was like a waterfall. Chu Feng used his spirit martial arts to move the palm-sized red, flying sword forward to stop the sea race expert. Even though half of this marine race expert's body was in tatters, he was still extraordinary. He shifted his body sideways and dodged the attack. He no longer persisted in killing the black yak. However, his hand that was reaching for the Buddhist staff did not change. He vowed to seize it. Puff! Chu Feng's flying sword had arrived. It was abnormally swift and violent, leaving a gash on his shoulder. Blood splattered everywhere, and his arm had almost been chopped off. In fact, if it weren't for his quick reflexes, the flying sword would have cut off his head. He dodged at the last moment and avoided being hit in a vital spot. You're courting death. This marine race expert suddenly turned around and faced Chu Feng. He was vigilant against the flying sword that had streaked across the sky. He knew he had to kill this human first. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have the chance to pick up that great killing weapon. This human was too dangerous. Don't tell me you're that Chu Feng, he asked. The other marine race experts stopped and scattered in all directions, cutting off Chu Feng's path of retreat. There was also a seahawk circling in the air. The seahawk cried out in the sky, "It's indeed you." The elder dragon king of the southern sea has already issued a decree. Whoever can bring your head to him will be rewarded with a mortal transformation fruit. Haha, we're in luck. Oh, who would have thought that the one who killed Heitung would be you? It's not like you have 3 heads and 6 arms. TSK. You do have some skills, but you're rushing in so rashly. Are you trying to throw away your life? The seagull in the air laughed. Don't say anything. Let's kill him first, shouted the marine race expert with half his body in tatters. He was somewhat apprehensive. He had just experienced Chu Feng's flying sword and knew how powerful it was. Moreover, he was the closest to Chu Feng, so he was afraid he would be the first to suffer Chu Feng's attack. Selling a favor to the elder dragon of the southern sea and even getting a mortal transformation fruit. It's really worth it. The fourth marine race expert laughed. At this moment, the four experts attacked together. Some swooped down from the sky, while others attacked from the rear. Careful! The white crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace warned from afar. It was heavily injured and had almost lost its fighting strength. The flying sword beside it was dim and without light. Apart from the two marine race experts attacking the white snake in the distance, the other four were surging with killing intent as they attacked in a frenzy. Boom! Chu Feng was cold and violent. He took out a black spear from the spatial bottle and thrust it directly at the weakest marine race expert. Black light erupted. The killer whale, King's weapon. At this moment, some people were shocked and came to their senses. The killer whale King's spear had changed owners. Was there even a need to say what would happen? They felt that they had underestimated Chu Feng, but they were not afraid. Could it be that he could fight against four experts alone? Clang! The marine race expert with half his body in tatters produced a sharp broadsword in his hand. It struck the black spear, and sparks flew in all directions. At first, he was still smiling coldly. If he could block this attack, the other three experts would arrive, and they could kill Chu Feng together. However, he was overwhelmed with shock in an instant. The long sword in his hand had been shattered by the tremendous force. Then, the web between his thumb and forefinger became numb, and blood flowed out. Swoosh! He rapidly retreated. Chu Feng pressed forward and evaded the attacks of the other three. He released incomparably violent energy fluctuations and was like a dazzling sun as he chased after the injured marine race expert. He possessed extreme speed and seemed to be teleporting. At this time, he was using the black spear as a club and swinging it forward with both hands. Crack! The marine race expert used the broken sword in his hand to block the attack, but it was shattered in the end. Moreover, the spear, or perhaps it was a club, had already smashed down like a bolt of black lightning. There was nothing left to block it. Puffed! The moment blood splattered, the marine race expert's body had been smashed into pieces. Half of his body had disappeared. This scene was somewhat terrifying. A marine race expert with 6 severed shackles was about to fall. Thump! At the last moment, Chu Feng followed up with a spear that pierced through his body and poured energy into it, causing him to explode. Everything happened too quickly. The people nearby were shaken. An expert with 6 severed shackles had disappeared from this world, just like that. Good kill. The Black Yak cried out excitedly. He had been sulking in Dawn Duo all this time. Now, he was finally able to vent out his resentment. The Seahawk, Seagull, and the marine race expert on the ground were all tensed up. They felt that they had underestimated this human. This was simply too strange. Could it be that this person was comparable to the sea god tiger? He was a complete mess of bravery. Chi. Beams of energy shot out one after the other. Although the 3 experts were somewhat apprehensive, they didn't hold back and were prepared to kill Chu Feng. With a flash of black light, the black spear in Chu Feng's hand disappeared. He produced a long, snow-white blade from his spatial bottle and held it horizontally in front of him to block their attacks. His killing intent surged to the sky. Chu Feng was testing out which weapon suited him best. The White Shark King's weapon. At this moment, the Sea Hawk and the others were truly alarmed. They felt a chill run down their spine and were somewhat afraid. That was because the White Shark King was a top-grade expert. He was much more powerful than the other marine race experts with 6 severed shackles. Even a peerless expert like the sea god tiger would look up to him. Swoosh! The Sea Hawk was the first to charge into the sky. He was extremely apprehensive and didn't dare to face the attack head-on. The Seagull was astonished and his attack power naturally decreased. Where are your guts? The marine race expert on the ground was infuriated. Were they going to let him face this human alone? The snow-white blade radiance blossomed, and the area was overflowing with killing intent. This marine race expert hadn't been struck by the Buddhist staff and wasn't injured like the previous expert. Hence, his combat strength wasn't weak. The intense collision shattered the mountain forest. So much so that 2 or 3 of the nearby mountain peaks were chopped off by Chu Feng's energy blade radiance. This marine race expert was covered in blood and wounds. He had already reached his limit after enduring dozens of moves. Boom! In the air, the Sea Hawk opened his mouth and spat out sword radiance. The seagull also spread his wings and shot out his feathers. It was as if hundreds of divine arrows were raining down and charging at Chu Feng. Clang! The sound of the bell lingered in the air as a large bell appeared outside Chu Feng's body. The shingy golden bell barrier protected his body, preventing external attacks from harming him. It was at this time that the 2 bird kings in the air swooped down toward the black yak and the white crane from the sword palace. They wanted to capture the 2 of them. The seagull that was charging toward the black yak was immediately blocked by Chu Feng's flying sword. Even the arrows he shot out were shattered by the sword radiance. Kill! It was also at this time that Chu Feng erupted with ocean-like blood energy. Energy poured out from all the pores on his body, and his whole body was resplendent. The long blade in his hand transformed into a beam of light that resembled the Milky Way and slashed toward the struggling marine race expert in front of him. This was an all-out attack that was as fast as lightning. The opponent simply couldn't dodge and could only resist with all his might. Puffed. The dazzling blade radiance split open the opponent's weapon and split the marine race expert into 2. Blood rained down as the 2 halves of the body fell to the sides. Chu Feng raised his saber and dashed through the 2 halves of the body, rushing towards the white crane to rescue it. The palace master of the Mount Shu Sword Palace wouldn't have fallen to such a state if he hadn't been heavily injured by the killer weapon. After all, he was a true, peerless expert whose imperial sword technique had reached perfection. Clang! Seeing the Sea Hawk pouncing over, the white crane barely managed to use the flying sword to block the enemy at the most critical moment. This was enough for him to buy some time. Chu Feng charged over and slashed at the Sea Hawk with the bright long blade in his hand. The Sea Hawk let out a long cry and spread its wings with all its might. It didn't dare to face the attack head-on, but it was still touched by the blade radiance. Feathers swirled in the air and a rain of blood fell. Its abdomen was injured and almost cut open. Chu Feng, just you wait. The Sea Hawk cried out in anger. It had already avoided Chu Feng's edge and didn't want to fight him, but in the end, it still suffered a blow. Chi, chi, chi. The blade radiance bloomed as Chu Feng turned to attack the Seagull King. Not far away, his flying sword was slashing around the Seagull King, entangling him and suppressing him so that he couldn't spread his wings and soar into the sky. The black yak wiped off his cold sweat. Just now, the Seagull King had almost stretched out his claws to tear him apart. Fortunately, Chu Feng's imperial sword technique was very powerful and his spiritual arts were superb. The Seagull King attacked with all its might and wanted to escape. However, the blade radiance swept over. Chu Feng leapt up and rushed into the air, slashing fiercely at it. The white lightning-like energy blade radiance was simply too terrifying. It couldn't block it. At this time, Chu Feng used his spiritual energy to move his body. He was almost suspended in the air as he fought with the Seagull King. At the same time, he used his flying sword to suppress it and prevent it from escaping. After dozens of moves, Chu Feng slashed out with his blade and cut the Seagull King into 2 halves in midair. The 2 halves fell down amidst a blood-curdling screech, completely dead. How dare you? At this time, the black yak was seething with anger. He was both shocked and afraid as he shouted loudly. That was because the Seagull King had actually returned and swooped down towards the nearby valley. It flapped its wings and attacked downwards, raining down beams of energy. Not to mention the inside of the valley, Even the mountain walls were cracking and collapsing with a rumble. They were about to submerge the valley. The Seagull King didn't escape because he wanted to kill the yellow cattle after discovering that it was sitting cross-legged in the valley. That was because the Seagull King knew that these people were very close. "Seagull, you're dead for sure," Chu Feng roared. He had long since sensed that the yellow cattle was there and had sent the Donkey King over in advance. But now, he was incomparably worried. After killing the Seagull King and resolving the Black Yak's crisis, he rushed into the valley and took out his black spear. Within the valley, the Donkey King used the spatial bottle Chu Feng had given him to store the yellow cattle and the boulder into the pristine jade bottle. He didn't dare touch the yellow cattle's body for fear of obstructing the yellow cattle's breakthrough. Hence, he could only move as a whole. Afterwards, the Donkey King and the injured Golden Condor King dodged left and right within the valley, avoiding the energy beams pouring down from the sky. At this time, the mountain walls in all directions had collapsed like a breached dam and were gradually submerging the entire valley. Chi! At this moment, Chu Feng hurled out the black spear, which transformed into a bolt of black lightning and shot into the sky. The Seahawk King did its best to evade, but one of its wings was still pierced through and a small part of it was blasted off. The excruciating pain was unbearable, and it couldn't help but let out a long cry as it flapped its wings and fled into the distance. "Roar!" Chu Feng roared angrily. He didn't want to let the bird go. He ran with extreme speed and chased after on the ground. This bird king had already escaped, but it still dared to come back and harm the yellow cattle. This caused the flames of fury to surge within him. Chu Feng's entire body seemed to be pulsating with light. His speed was simply too fast as he rushed up the mountain and soared into the sky. He was about to catch up to the Seahawk King. The Seahawk flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Its heart was filled with terror, and it was scared out of its wits. It had never seen such a fast person who could actually catch up to it. "Come down!" Chu Feng shouted loudly as he shot out his flying knife. The sword pierced through the sky and pierced through the Seahawk King's body, causing it to let out a mournful cry as it fell down. At the same time, Chu Feng had also rushed to the highest point in the sky and was about to fall. He brandished the long blade in his hand with all his might as the energy beams erupted. In the end, the Seahawk King let out a miserable wail as it was cleaved in the sky by Chu Feng's blade. Its body was severed, and its corpse fell down amidst a rain of blood. Within the mountain forest, the two marine race experts who were attacking the white snake were terrified after witnessing the battle just now. This was especially true after they saw Chu Feng soar into the sky like a demonic god and behead the Seahawk King with a single slash. Both of them turned pale and fled without a word. Chapter 293. There is a small problem with the spatial bottle in the previous chapter, so it was fixed immediately. A small portion of the faster readers saw it. The two marine race experts were indeed frightened out of their wits. That person was simply too terrifying. He had killed the Seahawk King with a single slash like a god descending from the heavens. They fled in the blink of an eye and didn't even look back. One had to know that these two were experts with 6 severed shackles. Yet they were so terrified. It was obvious how much the battle just now had affected them. Within the valley, the collapsed cliffs had buried a large area and boulders were tumbling about. The Donkey King was cursing and swearing incessantly. He had been smashed until his face was swollen, and some of his earlier wounds had opened up and were drenched in blood. Fortunately, he had managed to evade all of the Seahawk King's energy beams. The Golden Condor King was listless. The blow just now wasn't light. One of his wings was already fractured and could no longer fly. Fortunately, their lives weren't in any danger. Just now, the Donkey King had done everything he could to keep the spatial bottle stable. He didn't allow it to sway for fear of affecting the yellow cattle within. Thump! In the distance, the Seahawk King's corpse fell to the ground, causing the forest to shake violently and dyeing the ground red. With a swoosh, Chu Feng appeared within the dilapidated valley. He was somewhat nervous, worried that something might have happened to the yellow cattle. The Donkey King immediately showed Chu Feng his bruised and swollen face. He said that his hands were steady despite being smashed by boulders weighing tens of thousands of kilograms. The yellow cattle was unharmed. Chu Feng received the pristine jade bottle and carefully released the yellow cattle. The latter's eyes were tightly shut and suffused with blood energy. It was truly a frightening sight. Chu Feng had personally experienced how difficult it was to sever one's shackles by relying on oneself. The yellow cattle's current state made him worried. After all, it was too young and too risky. Doubtlessly, the yellow cattle was circulating the special breathing technique. It was completely focused and isolated from the outside world. Its spiritual was almost completely sealed off. Chu Feng transmitted his voice carefully, hoping to wake it up and tell it not to risk its life. However, the yellow cattle didn't seem to notice. After some thought, Chu Feng also circulated the mysterious breathing technique. The two techniques were of the same origin, and the energy pulsation was the same. Finally, yellow cattle had a reaction. He slowly opened his eyes. He knew what had happened. His blood energy gradually converged, and the restless energy returned to normal. He sighed. That was close. He was too eager for quick results and was too engrossed in it, almost causing a great disaster. In the end, he was still too young and was not suitable for such a domineering breakthrough. Moreover, he had almost lost himself just now. Pooh! Yellow cattle coughed up a mouthful of blood. It was still injured. Its body swayed and it fell backwards. This gave Chu Feng a fright, and he hurriedly supported him. Could it be that his foundation was injured? This was not good. Even the Donkey King was quite nervous. He was worried that the yellow cattle had met with misfortune. I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while. Fortunately, I woke up. Otherwise, if I really walked the path of darkness, something big might have happened. Yellow Cow was scared. At this time, the Black Yak's howl came through, startling Chu Feng. He thought that a powerful enemy had come to kill him again. Quickly go and save him. The Black Yak could finally move. He ran into the collapsed valley anxiously and shouted at Chu Feng, telling him to go and save the Manchurian tiger. At this time, the white crane from the Mount Shu Sword Palace had also caught its breath and entered the valley. The white snake had also arrived. Their injuries were extremely serious and needed time to recuperate. Chu Feng had many questions to ask them and wanted to understand the inside story. But after seeing the Black Yak's anxious appearance, he hurriedly asked him to lead the way. It's over there. I heard it roaring not long ago, but there's no movement now. You guys wait here. Be careful. After saying this, Chu Feng leapt up with a boom. He raised his snow-white sword and rushed dozens of kilometers away, increasing his speed to the extreme. The forest was lush and verdant, but large patches of trees had fallen in certain areas. There were also many places where not even a blade of grass could be seen. It was as if a meteorite had struck the land. The high temperature had melted and crystallized the potholes on the ground. This was the result of a confrontation between king-level entities. Chu Feng's heart sank. He ran for hundreds of kilometers in one go and saw some of the Manchurian tigers fur along the way. It seemed it had been injured. This time, the Manchurian tiger was unyielding and didn't defect. It fought fiercely with the marine race and drew the enemy away for yellow cattle. This surprised even Chu Feng. Now that he knew the tiger's injuries were not light, he was somewhat anxious. Finally, after chasing for almost 100 kilometers, Chu Feng heard the tiger's roar. Chu Feng traversed the mountain ridges, leaping over a mountain peak with each leap. He was finally able to relax as he got closer. At least the Manchurian tiger wasn't dead. It's not easy for it to be so unyielding at times. It actually fought until now. Chu Feng's opinion of the tiger had changed. In the past, he always felt that it didn't have the explosive temper of a king of beasts. The tiger's roar was very loud in the distance. However, very soon, Chu Feng was stunned and his expression froze. That was because he heard the Manchurian tiger's roar. Stop fighting, I surrender. I'm convinced. I've decided to forsake darkness for light. Stop fighting. This king is prepared to surrender and conspire with the marine race. Stop now. I have friendly relations with your marine race. I met many kings in the Jiangxi region. God damn it, did you hear me? I want to surrender. Chu Feng was completely speechless. This tiger's nature was hard to change. It didn't care about its reputation at all and was begging to surrender. However, the two marine race experts weren't willing to pay attention to it. They were bent on finishing it off. Can't you see that I look similar to the sea god tiger? We're related by blood. You two idiots are offending the dignity of our race. God damn it. I've met two idiots who can't even speak a word. There's no way to communicate. How can I live? Save me. Who can save this king? The Manchurian tiger howled dryly. Chu Feng couldn't stand it any longer. He walked out of the forest and rushed toward the barren area. Stop fighting. I'll take you to Chu Feng. I know where he is. I'll sell him to you. The Manchurian tiger shouted. God damn it. Chu Feng's expression was wooden as he appeared at the edge of the battlefield. Oh, whoa, what the hell? The Manchurian tiger cried out in alarm after seeing him. He simply couldn't believe his eyes. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Oh, whoa. He howled like a wolf as he scuttled about. Brother, you finally appeared. Hurry up and kill the enemies. I've almost beaten these two bastards to death. They're too weak to withstand a single blow. I'll leave the rest to you. The Manchurian tiger ran frantically toward Chu Feng. Didn't you want to sell me? Chu Feng said with a dark expression. The Manchurian tiger was about to burst into tears. He had actually been discovered. He hurriedly explained, Am I that kind of person? I won't do such a thing. I'm just stalling for time and fooling around with those two marine race bastards. In fact, Chu Feng's impression of the tiger wasn't bad this time. If the Manchurian tiger had really surrendered, he would have directly led the two marine race experts to capture the yellow cattle. This time, in order to protect the yellow cattle, he had taken the initiative to lure the two marine race experts away. On the other side, the two of them both had a head of green hair, and even their skin was green. At the same time, it also had a metallic luster. Let me tell you, these two bastards' bodies are too sturdy. We can't move them at all. The Manchurian tiger reminded. Clang! The long saber in Chu Feng's hand flickered with a cold light. He dragged the snow-white weapon and walked forward fearlessly. The White Shark King's weapon. At this time, the two experts were finally moved and revealed expressions of dread. However, they still attacked and didn't shrink back. Boom! One of them directly collided with Chu Feng. His entire body blossomed with a green radiance. Clang! Chu Feng slashed out with his saber and slashed at one of them. Sparks flew in all directions, but he was actually unable to split the man apart. This greatly astonished him. The other person also moved. He transformed into a beam of green light and met Chu Feng head-on. Truly bastards. Chu Feng was speechless. It turned out that the Manchurian tiger wasn't just cursing people. These two monsters were actually sea turtles. Ordinary people really couldn't break through the defense of these two sea turtles. The tortoise shell was astonishingly sturdy. The Manchurian tiger shouted from behind, I was chased earlier and my vitality was greatly damaged. That's why my combat strength has been reduced. Otherwise, I would have killed these two bastards long ago. Chu Feng circulated his breathing technique and went all out. He didn't believe that he couldn't cut open the tortoise shell. White mist came out of his mouth and nose as the pores all over his body glowed. Kill! Chu Feng shouted as the radiance of the long saber in his hand became increasingly resplendent. Run! The two sea turtles had a bad premonition and turned to flee. Where do you think you're going? Chu Feng shouted. It had to be said that these two sea turtles were quite extraordinary. Their speed was astonishing, but they couldn't escape after encountering Chu Feng. After being caught up, another round of killing and collisions ensued. Chi! In the end, Chu Feng's snow-white, long saber slashed out with a terrifying beam of light and split one of the sea turtles into two halves. Drenched in blood, the sea turtle transformed back into its original form. I'll fight it out with you, the other person shouted. This time, Chu Feng was even more resolute and merciless. He slashed out more than 10 times with all his might and finally killed the remaining sea turtle. The Manchurian tiger was fairly astonished. After not seeing each other for a few days, Chu Feng's strength had improved greatly. He had even killed the 2 invulnerable sea turtle kings. It was truly shocking. You become much stronger after becoming a monk for a few days. Next time, I'll also go to the Great Woods Temple to eat vegetarian and pray to Buddha, the Manchurian tiger mumbled. But he was fairly happy to have escaped danger. He asked why Chu Feng had come and what powerful characters he had encountered. Let me tell you, I have a very powerful relative called the sea god tiger. You must be careful, it's very dangerous, the Manchurian tiger reminded. One's from the sea, the other from the land. Why are you randomly recognizing relatives? Chu Feng cast a sidelong glance at him. The 2 hurried back to the valley and met up with Yellow Cattle's group. Chu Feng had too many questions he wanted to ask them. This time, the experts of the eastern, southern, and northern seas have joined hands to deal with us. It can be said that they have many experts. The White Crane sighed. Previously, Hei Tung and the 3-eyed marine race expert Qian, you had come from the southern sea. This time, the 3 seas had joined forces and attacked together. Now, the experts of the 3 seas had joined forces and appeared at the same time. They were incomparably powerful. There's someone from the continent who's defected to the marine race. They've cheated us. The White Crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace said with certainty. The marine race and the land race had cooperated when they first ascended Mount Longhu, but they also clashed from time to time. The enmity between them was quite strong. At first, the peerless experts of the continent had discussed and prepared to set up an ambush. That was because they had discovered a natural domain and wanted to lure the marine race inside. As a result, one of the creatures on the land went to inform the others, and everything became terrible because of this. The marine race had a great killing weapon in their hands. The Wudong Grandmaster, the Mastiff King, and the others, are they still alive? Chu Feng asked. Perhaps they are. The White Crane replied. Chapter 294. The White Crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace also didn't know who it was that had defected to the enemy and leaked information to the marine race. This was the fatal blow and put the continental experts in danger. That was because they didn't know which of the people around them was the source of the disaster. Hence, even though they were surrounded and hunted down, it was difficult for them to unite against the enemy. They were all secretly on guard, afraid of being ambushed by the people around them. Chu Feng frowned after hearing this. This wasn't good news. Afterwards, he thought of the Peacock King, the Golden Crow, and then the Xingyi Grandmaster Su Qing. All of them made him suspicious, especially the white-robed Su Qing. He had a close relationship with the 3-eyed marine race expert Qianyu. The Peacock King escaped with heavy injuries. He almost died, and his heart was torn apart. He had suffered a fatal blow from the marine race's killer weapon. The White Snake spoke. Her condition wasn't very good. Her body had been cut in 2 and was only forcefully joining them back together. It would take several days for her to recover completely. Even those who had severed their 6th shackle and were full of vitality, not everyone possessed miraculous recovery techniques like Chu Feng. They couldn't recover within a short period of time. As for the white-robed Su Qing you spoke of, he didn't come to Mount Longhu and never saw him, said the White Crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace. Even the youngest Xingyi Grandmaster Su Qing hadn't come with the group and couldn't possibly know about their plan to deal with the marine race. The Manchurian tiger mumbled. They wanted to lure the marine race into the domain, but were killed instead? This is too depressing. The situation was urgent at that time. The marine race wanted to ambush us even if we didn't take action. Hence, our preparations were too hasty and our secret was leaked. That's why we suffered such heavy losses. The White Crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace had been struck by the divine flood dragon talisman and almost died on the spot. The Wudong Grandmaster and the Mastiff King were also in a similar situation. They had all been injured by the marine race's terrifying killer weapon. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Chu Feng was prepared to kill the marine race experts and rescue the continental experts. He had come on Lu Tong's request and also wanted to return the favor by rescuing the experts from the Hollow Jade, 8 Visions, and roaming Jade Temples. As for the Wudong Grandmaster and the others, they were even more duty-bound to save them. The White Snake and the Master of the Shushan Sword Palace told Chu Feng some things to take note of. They told him which of the sea tribes were terrifying and which had great killing weapons. Chu Feng nodded. This information was very important to him. You guys should leave. The depths of this space are too dangerous, Chu Feng said. The people here were all seriously injured and couldn't fight a bloody battle. Okay, take care of yourself. Manchurian Tiger answered very happily. The Black Yak glared at him, saying that he had no sense of loyalty. He turned to Chu Feng and said, I'll go with you. At the critical moment, I can wave my staff and deliver a fatal blow. I'll go too. I can also wave the staff once. Yellow Cattle nodded, unwilling to leave. Woof, woof, I'll go with Brother Tiger. I won't drag you guys down. The old donkey ran off into the distance with a whoosh. The Black Yak glared at him. Yellow Cattle also threatened to go with him, saying that he could also wave the staff once and deliver a fatal blow at the critical moment. The Buddha's staff was a very special weapon. Every time it was used, it would drain the user's energy dry. Yellow Cattle, the Black Yak, and the Donkey King could use it to heavily injure or even kill experts with 6 severed shackles. If Chu Feng were to use it, it would definitely be more powerful. However, his energy would also be drained in an instant. In the end, the Manchurian Tiger also returned dispiritedly. He really didn't want to stay in this space any longer. He felt that it was too dangerous. The Golden Condor King was badly injured and couldn't follow them. Chu Feng gave him a sparkling calabash seed and told him to leave with the White Crane and the others. Chu Feng found the Black Spear in the mountain ridge and set out with the Black Yak. Don't worry, I can put you into the spatial bottle if there's any danger. You'll be fine as long as I don't die, Chu Feng said to the Manchurian Tiger. In truth, this fellow was an expert. After cultivating the Xingyi breathing technique, he could even fight one against 2 sea turtles with astonishing defensive power. However, it was difficult to change one's nature. He always wanted to slip away and wasn't willing to take risks. In his words, can bravery be used to make a living? Only a fool would risk his life for no reason. These words made everyone speechless and wanted to beat him up. Yellow Cattle, do you recognize this fruit? Chu Feng produced the stone fruit from the spatial bottle. Immediately, a strong fragrance assailed their nostrils. Everyone was astonished and turned back to look. The stone fruit was as big as a peach and had a similar shape. However, it was completely gray and made of stone. There were cracks on its surface, revealing the bright red flesh within. So strange. Let me taste it. The Manchurian Tiger stretched out his claws but was slapped to the side by Chu Feng. Where did you pick it? Yellow Cattle revealed an astonished expression. Soon after, his little face tensed up and his expression became extremely solemn as he asked for the details. Chu Feng told him everything that had happened in detail. Oh no, we have to leave immediately after saving them. Yellow Cattle was somewhat nervous as he looked around. What's going on? Chu Feng was puzzled. The others were also suspicious. It was just a fruit. Was there a need to be so serious? This is a demon refinement fruit. Yellow Cattle's beautiful little face was filled with worry. He would occasionally observe the surroundings and explain the origin of this fruit. Some powerful ancient evolved beings, such as the Taoist spiritual masters and the Buddhist golden arhats, would suppress and refine the beasts in their domains after subduing demons. Yellow Cattle suspected that this was a demon refinement ground with a great demon suppressed underground. And this fruit was the result of demon refinement. Some of the powerful evolved beings of the ancient beasts would find it difficult to kill them. Their blood energy would seep out and form the demon refinement fruit. How could it be like this? The Donkey King looked left and right in fear that a great demon would suddenly jump out of the ground. Yellow Cattle nodded. In the outer realms, Most of the powerful orthodoxies have demon refinement grounds used to cultivate demon refinement fruits. Mount Longhu is the ancestral court of Taoism on Earth. Ancient heavenly masters often subdued demons, so it's normal for them to have demon refinement grounds, said Chu Feng. This was Mount Longhu. During a certain period of time, there would always be a heavenly master overseeing this place. Those were well-known figures among the ancient evolved beings. According to your description, this demon refinement fruit wasn't cultivated on purpose. Instead, it grew naturally after a crack appeared in the domain and the great demon's blood energy seeped out. According to Yellow Cattle, this was a type of warning sign. It would be fine if those great demons had died in the passage of time and had been completely refined. If they were still breathing and hadn't died completely, this area would be extremely terrifying once they escaped. After being sealed in the demon refinement grounds for so long, even normal creatures would probably go insane after escaping. It was likely that they would cause a bloody calamity. It wasn't as if such things hadn't happened before in some great realms. Even some powerful orthodoxies had experienced old demons escaping from their demon refinement grounds and wreaking havoc in a region. Those who escaped were all lunatics. After being locked up for so many years, their minds were no longer normal. Add to that their hatred and desire for revenge. It was even more terrifying. Why is it getting more and more frightening? Should I consider leaving for the West and changing my name to the Siberian Tiger? The Tiger King mumbled. He felt that Mount Longhu was too dangerous and that a disaster was about to happen. His life would be in danger if he stayed in the East. Yellow Cattle said, "The ancient heavenly masters are powerhouses. It's impossible that they don't have a backup plan. I think that mysterious weapon we saw last time might be able to suppress demons." He mentioned the weapon that had blasted the flying saucer down. At that time, a dragon and a tiger had appeared and formed a golden mushroom cloud, which had twisted the flying saucer into two. The scene was fairly astonishing. "But we still need to leave this place as soon as possible," added Yellow Cattle. That weapon was suspected to be buried beneath Mount Longhu and not in this space. They had to escape from this place. Yellow Cattle reckoned that once the domains were broken, a great demon who hadn't breathed its last would be killed by that mysterious weapon. Everyone became serious and felt that they couldn't stay in this space for too long. "All right, what's the use of this fruit?" asked the Black Yak. "It's a precious medicine for healing injuries and replenishing life essence energy. This kind of peerless fruit can even regrow flesh and bones from the brink of death. The premise is that there's an extremely terrifying old demon in the demon refinement ground." This was obvious. The more powerful the demon in the demon refinement ground, the more astonishing the fruit would be. Chu Feng passed the stone fruit to Yellow Cattle so that he could recover his vitality. The little fellow had tried to act brave and sever his shackles on his own. Although his foundations weren't damaged, he was still gravely injured. Yellow Cattle didn't hold back because there might be hidden dangers if he didn't recuperate as soon as possible. He absorbed the bright red flesh of the stone fruit as he hurried along. Its fragrance assailed his nostrils. This was something that grew from a stone tree formed from the essence of an ancient great demon. It could be considered a divine medicine for healing injuries to beings at their realm. It didn't take long for his depleted vitality to be replenished. So miraculous. The group was stunned. There was still more than half of the fruit left. Yellow Cattle hadn't finished using it yet. "All of you are injured. Give it a try," said Chu Feng. "Very well." The Manchurian tiger stretched out his claws. The Black Yak was also looking forward to it. He had lost a horn and had suffered a lot. Now, he really needed some treatment. Before long, the Manchurian tiger and the Donkey King let out odd cries. They felt their bodies itch as some of their wounds wriggled and healed rapidly. The strange energy the enemy had left in their bodies had been expelled. Their injuries were healed too quickly. The Donkey King's tail was slowly growing back and might even recover. The Black Yak mooed continuously. His wounded body was almost healed. Even a root of his broken horn was numb and filled with vitality. In the end, a small horn grew out. He knew that as long as he recuperated for a period of time, his horn would definitely recover to its original state. This effect is too powerful. Chu Feng was astonished. Naturally. Otherwise, why would those powerful orthodoxies have a place to refine medicine? That's because the demon refinement fruit is too important to a sect. Won't this cause trouble? The experts of the great sects will subdue the demons and cultivate the demon refinement fruit. The beast race will definitely retaliate and kill them, said Chu Feng. There are restrictions. Only those who have committed the most heinous crimes can be suppressed, replied Yellow Cattle. But the group could feel that there was definitely a loophole in the rules. There were many battles in the outer realms. Even those resplendent holy lands were bound to be stained with blood. The demons of the outer realms are too miserable. The Black Yak grinned. He felt that those places were too dangerous. There are all kinds of creatures in the demon refinement ground, including the ferocious humans. Not all of them are demons. It all depends on who is suppressing them. According to ancient records, there were heavenly masters, and even Bodhisattva was among the evolved beings in a certain demonic saint's demon refinement ground, Yellow Ox said. The group was dumbfounded. They deeply felt the power and glory of the outer realms. Afterwards, they advanced once more and charged into the depths of this mysterious space. It wasn't as vast as they had imagined. After arriving, they heard the sounds of fighting. They saw many figures and surging sword chi. There were people fighting, and the ground was stained with blood. The most astonishing thing was that the soil in this area had been split open to reveal a giant azure calabash as tall as a mountain. This calabash seemed to have just broken out of the ground. Moreover, strands of blood energy seeped out from the mouth of the calabash. The most astonishing thing was that there were many stone trees growing near the mouth of the calabash. There were fruits of different sizes on each tree, and their fragrance wafted through the air. Yellow Cattle saw this and felt his scalp go numb. The domain of the demon refinement ground has been broken. The core item for refining medicine has been unearthed. Kill. There was a great explosion of golden light in the air. A winged sea beast rushed into the sky and fought fiercely with a blood-drenched golden-winged roc. Boom! On the other side, a silver-scaled sea beast resembling a crocodile was fighting the roaming Jade Temple Master. This area had been blasted apart. The battle was incomparably fierce. There were also some marine race experts surrounding the Azure Calabash, wanting to take it for themselves. Chapter 295. The mountainous terrain ahead was charred black, and some places had even melted and crystallized due to the high temperature. The battle was very intense. Experts were fighting in the air and in the depths of the stone forest. Those who could fight here were naturally top-notch experts. Boom! As soon as they got close, a wave of energy came crashing over, sending a boulder weighing tens of thousands of kilograms flying into the air beside Chu Feng's group. The terrain here was very open, and the trees were relatively sparse. It was a battlefield suitable for a showdown. Mount Kongtong's Old Mountain Tortoise, the other white crane of the Mount Shu Sword Palace, the roaming Jade Temple Master. All of them were engaged in a bloody battle. Everyone was covered in blood. Buzz! Flames overflowed as a sea monkey carried azure flames with it. It attacked the experts on the continent, burning the few trees to ashes. Magma flowed on the ground, bright red and flourishing. This creature was very special. It was an ancient species with a powerful bloodline, and its population was extremely small. It roared, sending waves of lava hundreds of meters into the sky. It wanted to sweep the white crane down. Chi! The sword was like a rainbow. The palace master of the Mount Shu Sword Palace spat out a cloud of snow-white essence chi, which fused into the flying sword. It increased its power and flew downwards. The waves of lava were split apart, and the 2-meter-tall sea monkey staggered. It tumbled backwards, its bronze scales sending sparks flying in all directions. Its defensive power was astonishing and only a small part of it was damaged, with blood seeping out of it. Bang! On the other side, high up in the sky, a sea beast was flying like lightning. It was too fast, carrying lightning with it. This winged sea beast was like a jackal, but its body was covered in glittering purple spikes. It collided with the golden-winged rock with too much force. In a flash, the golden feathers fell from the golden-winged rock. One had to know that the Rock King was one of the top 10 experts of the Eastern continent, yet had been injured. Its opponent was like a jackal, but its body was covered in spikes, like a porcupine. Add to that the pair of terrifying wings that had once sliced off a mountain. It appeared even more strange and terrifying. There's actually more reinforcements. A few more have come to die. A sea beast roared. Its body was enormous, comparable to a small mountain. It looked like a large dog, its bloody mouth wide open, bringing with it a fishy smell as it roared over. It lowered its head and was about to swallow Chu Feng and the others in one gulp, bringing with it a terrifying sense of oppression. Its sharp, snow-white teeth were even taller than Chu Feng and the others. Chi, the snow-white long blade in Chu Feng's hand, emitted a glaring light. It was as if a river of stars had exploded. It was extremely dazzling. The energy blade light rushed up and chopped towards that bloody mouth. The dog-like sea beast reacted very quickly. It moved to the side and almost rolled to the side to avoid the snow-white longsword. Even so, there was still blood flowing from its mouth. After being grazed by the blade, its lower lip was torn apart, revealing a very deep wound. The big dog's expression immediately turned ugly. It thought that it had encountered a soft persimmon and had come over to torture and kill it. Who would have thought that a blade light would be able to injure it? Troublesome. Let's kill him together. It called out to the nearby, three-headed sea beast. Currently, the marine race's greatest advantage was that they had far more experts than those on land. There were some marine race experts that hadn't participated in the battle yet and were currently studying the mountain-like azure calabash. Whoosh! How could Chu Feng wait for others to surround him? He decisively took action and did everything he could to eliminate this big dog as soon as possible. He had come to rescue people, so he naturally couldn't avoid killing. Since he was going to take action, he would fight to the end and seize the initiative. Snow-white blade light blossomed here, extremely resplendent. Chu Feng's movements were extremely fast as he continuously brandished his blade. Energy gushed out from the pores of his body, and his entire body was shining like a god of war descending to the mortal realm. Ah, the big dog cried out in alarm because in the blink of an eye, this human male had hacked out several hundred times. This was too terrifying, and it couldn't block it at all. In the blink of an eye, many bloody wounds appeared on its body, and some of them were so deep that bones could be seen. There was even a blade light that almost cut open its forehead. Ho! In the distance, there were sea beasts roaring, causing the earth and mountains to shake. They had already rushed over with a terrifying aura to help the big dog. However, Chu Feng didn't give him a chance. The dazzling snow-white blade slashed out for the 500th time, cutting off one of the big dog's large claws. It fell to the ground with blood gushing out like a small stream. The big dog screamed. The 501st slash fell, and there was no longer anything that could stop Chu Feng's shocking blade light. With a flash of light, blood splashed everywhere, and with a puff, the big dog's head was cut off. It had lost its life. Its mountain-like body collapsed with a loud rumble, smashing into the ground and causing dust to rise. Then, blood gushed out from its neck like a small river. Kill him. Not far away, some marine race members shouted angrily. 3 experts immediately rushed over. They hadn't expected that Chu Feng would be so brave and kill as soon as he arrived. Not only did they attack Chu Feng, but one of the sea beasts even stretched out its 10-meter-long claws to grab the Manchurian tiger's group. The Manchurian tiger was furious. He transformed into his true form and, with a loud roar, collided head-on with that sea beast. The black yak was holding his Buddhist staff and was ready to unleash a peerless attack at any moment. He had been holding back all this time because if he was going to kill, he would kill the strongest expert. He was currently searching for his target. The ones attacking Chu Feng were two sea fish. They treated the air as a vast ocean and were as fast as lightning. From time to time, they would streak across the sky and launch continuous attacks at Chu Feng. Clang, clang, clang. Chu Feng brandished his blade and met the two sea fish head-on. Their bodies were glowing and covered in purple gold scales. Sparks flew as they clashed with the blade's edge. The most important thing was their movement techniques. They were truly like swimming fish, gliding through the air like lightning. Each time, they would attack Chu Feng with their blade-like tails. This kind of movement technique is worth learning. Chu Feng discovered that the arcs drawn by the two fish were not only beautiful, but also practical. They could evade the enemy and increase their attack power. The way they exerted their strength was quite special. The two sea fish were actually able to directly divert the force when Chu Feng hacked at them with his long blade. But that was as far as it went. Chu Feng erupted with all his might. His left palm lit up with resplendent lightning, and in the blink of an eye, densely packed lightning bolts flew out and struck the two sea fish. Although they were powerful, their bodies became sluggish. Their scales fell off and they were drenched in blood. At the same time, Chu Feng brandished his blade. This time, the two fish were no longer agile and were struck. Moreover, they were unable to divert the force and were immediately beheaded as they fell to the ground. This immediately caused a huge commotion. The marine race were all alarmed because 3 experts had died in such a short period of time. The incoming enemy had exceeded their expectations. Everyone prepared to retreat. Chu Feng secretly communicated with the continental experts with his spiritual power, informing them that this was a demon refinement ground. There might be terrifying ancient evolvers within the azure calabash that were about to escape. It would be extremely dangerous to stay here. Several people replied in astonishment. They couldn't shake off their opponents for a while because the marine race was too difficult to deal with. Moreover, there were flying sea beasts that could catch up to them. At this moment, the marine race experts were at the mouth of the azure calabash and were thinking of ways to pluck the fruits from the stone tree. They hadn't taken action yet, or else the consequences would be even worse. Most importantly, these continental experts had been seriously injured by the great killing weapons. Their vitality was greatly damaged, and they were far from their peak state. Strand after strand of blood energy seeped out from the mouth of the azure calabash. The aura emitted made people feel uneasy, and even the marine race felt that something was wrong. However, there was still a group of experts lingering around the mouth of the calabash. They tried to forcefully approach the stone tree, but there was an invisible energy obstructing them. Kill these people first. Regardless of whether it was above or below the calabash, there were marine race experts who had noticed Chu Feng. They felt that he was a threat and moved in succession to surround and kill him. Chu Feng walked around the azure calabash and saw that there were people fighting in the distance on the other side. Old Black, let's get ready too. We'll rush up the azure calabash and snatch a few demon refinement fruits, said Chu Feng. He had the black yak and the others follow him as they prepared to launch their great killing weapons. The experts at the mouth of the calabash were all very powerful and well-known. Roar! At the same time, the Manchurian tiger went berserk and decided victory and defeat with its opponent. It was now in its peak state, and the enemy wasn't very strong. With a puff, it tore the sea beast into 2 halves. Let's go and charge up. Chu Feng took the lead and attacked the azure calabash. The demon refinement fruits were very important. If they could seize 2 or 3 of them, they could help the continental experts recover their vitality and change the current situation. However, it was somewhat difficult. The marine race experts had gathered there and had only managed to pluck 3 or 4 fruits. There was an invisible force at the mouth of the calabash. Rumble. Chu Feng crushed several marine race experts along the way as if he was crushing dry weeds and smashing them away. He forcefully rushed to the top of the calabash. Who dares behave atrociously? Someone shouted from the group at the mouth of the calabash. This was a brown-haired man about 180 centimeters tall. His skin was bronze in color, and he looked strong and powerful. He looked down and sneered, courting death. Boom! He raised his hand and directly pressed down. This was a very terrifying scene. His hand enlarged and slapped down in the blink of an eye, emitting terrifying energy light. It was as if a Buddha's hand was slapping down to suppress a demon. The other marine race experts were all in awe of him. From his gaze, they could tell that this person was a top character of the marine race. Thump! Chu Feng shouted loudly. The long blade in his hand shone resplendently and emitted incomparably dazzling splendor. The snow-white blade light rushed hundreds of meters into the air and met the golden hand head-on. Boom! There was a huge explosion here. The blade light collapsed, and energy overflowed in all directions. Following which, there was a crack as the snow-white blade in Chu Feng's hand exploded. This was the weapon of the White Shark King, but it was directly smashed by the golden palm. Chu Feng was terrified. He knew he had encountered a powerful character. This was a peerless expert of the marine race, one of the strongest experts in this space. Thump! In a split second, he swung his fist and collided with the huge palm. A storm blew up between the two, followed by a burst of dazzling light. It was as if a meteor had struck the earth. The light illuminated the heaven and earth, and at the same time emitted a destructive aura. Chu Feng felt his arm go numb, and his fist was in severe pain. The power of the golden palm was too great. It was as if a Buddha was suppressing a demon, firm and tyrannical. Somewhat interesting. The brown-haired young man at the mouth of the calabash said. His bronze skin became even more lustrous. He looked down and said, "Come up and receive your death." At this time, the Manchurian tiger, the black yak, and the others were all scared. No one knew better than them how powerful Chu Feng was. But now, he had encountered a terrifying opponent. This person had smashed the snow-white blade with his bare hands. How hard was his palm? Chu Feng boarded the azure calabash. No matter what, he had to seize a few refined medicine fruits. Only by restoring some of the continental experts to their peak would they be able to break out of the encirclement. Suddenly, he was horrified. That was because, as he approached, he just happened to see the abnormal scene at the mouth of the calabash. Their blood energy was gushing out and becoming increasingly dense. Moreover, at this time, he saw a woman's head emerge from the mouth of the calabash. Although her complexion was pale, she possessed peerless beauty. In just a split second, Chu Feng's expression became absent-minded. On one hand, the other party possessed a devastatingly beautiful appearance. But on the other hand, it only made him slightly dazed. The most important thing was a formless energy fluctuation. It made his heart palpitate and shiver. His mind was almost stolen. Chapter 296. The marine race group sensed something and turned back to gaze at the mouth of the calabash. However, it was empty within moments. The pale lady had disappeared and returned to the calabash. Only her blood energy was rising in spirals. Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He was sure that what happened just now wasn't an illusion. There was indeed a peerless beauty in front of him. Apart from the lack of blood, her countenance was flawless. He believed that this was a powerful character among the ancient, evolved beings. Otherwise, how could she have survived in the demon refinement grounds until now? In truth, the Manchurian tiger and the others were also stunned. They only saw a blur before their eyes and felt their hair stand on end. Of course, they were also stunned. Her beauty can topple cities. She's ranked first among all the women I've seen in the past hundreds of years, the black yak muttered. Although the Donkey King was quite shocked just now, he was still quite talkative. Who's ranked first? I met her at the base of Mount Kunlun when I was 15. She was graceful, gentle, and beautiful. Her curves were undulating and could be considered a peerless beauty. The black yak sank into his memories. You met an immortal? The Manchurian tiger was astonished. The black yak nodded solemnly. Yes, a navy blue female yak king. It's unforgettable to this day. The Manchurian tiger and the Donkey King rolled their eyes. Was there anything more ridiculous than this? But after some thought, they understood that the navy blue yak might be a female immortal in the black yak's eyes. "What nonsense are you spouting?" the marine race group shouted. They didn't want to listen to his nonsense because they had already sensed that something was wrong with this place. That was also why they wanted to pick the stone fruits as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would have long since joined the battle to kill the experts of the continent. "You guys don't understand. That's a Saint Beast die." The black yak was speaking warmly as though he were reminiscing, but the next moment, he swung his Buddhist staff and smashed forward. This was naturally intentional. Just now, he had feigned madness as though he was immersed in the past. In reality, he was accumulating energy for a fatal blow. There were many marine race experts here, and it was a good time to use his killer weapon. Boom! Torrential energy surged and drowned the entire area. A golden arhut appeared and began chanting sutras as it charged forward. "You dare!" that brown-haired man shouted, and with a chong sound, he pulled out a 3-foot-long azure gold sword from his back. It was incomparably sharp, and he hacked forward. The sword light was like lightning, too resplendent. It illuminated the space around the mouth of the calabash, making the space around it unstable. The most terrifying thing was that the 3-foot green gold sword was able to resist the Buddhist energy. Although it wasn't as good as the Buddhist staff, it wasn't much weaker. Boom! The entire area exploded. The bronze-colored skin of the brown-haired man glowed. He was strong and powerful. Borrowing the power of the green gold sword, he quickly retreated and evaded the attack. Not everyone in this area was able to escape. Some people followed the brown-haired young man out of the danger zone, but others suffered heavy injuries. Puff! Blood splashed in all directions. The two people in the front were smashed by the explosive energy of the Buddhist staff and turned into meat paste. Some of them lost their arms, some had their legs broken, and some even had half of their bodies destroyed. The main thing was that the space in the mouth of the calabash was limited, making it difficult to dodge. Only two. The great black yak was extremely dissatisfied and depressed. He had thought that he would be able to smash 5 or 6 people to death with this ambush. "Be content," the Donkey King said. He received the Buddhist staff and was eager to give it a try. Meanwhile, the great black yak was about to go limp and had to be supported by the Manchurian tiger. Swoosh! Chu Feng placed the old yak into the pristine jade bottle to recuperate in order to prevent any accidents from happening to him. "You guys really deserve to die." The marine race experts on the other side were furious. Even the brown-haired young man's expression was cold. He held the green gold sword in his hand and pointed it toward them. He didn't utter a single word and was emitting a powerful killing intent. Chu Feng immediately knew who he was. It was a human from the seabed. The green gold sword in his hand was a great killing weapon. He had once attacked the white snake and slashed her body in half. This race was called the marine race. They were extremely few in number and looked similar to humans. However, they breathed through their gills and weren't like the legendary mermaids. "Come at me if you're not afraid of death," the Donkey King challenged. He had already transformed into his human form and was holding the Buddhist staff in his hand. His arms were glowing as he poured energy into them. This marine person was called Luo Tian. He held the 3-foot green gold sword in his hand and said to the people around him, "All of you retreat." He himself moved to attack. "Retreat your grandpa." The Donkey King decisively waved his Buddhist staff after seeing the situation. This great killing weapon had a wide attack range and wasn't afraid of Luo Tian charging over. Boom! As expected, a great explosion erupted at the mouth of the calabash. Energy surged, and Luo Tian was forced back once more. 3 of the injured marine race experts who had escaped with broken bones and tendons were smashed to smithereens. At the same time, another person in the distance was injured. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, the marine race experts jumped down from the calabash in succession. This was simply too unjust. There was no way to fight. The other party was relying on a great killing weapon to suppress them. This made them feel extremely sullen. In truth, they had used this method to kill the continental experts not long ago. Luo Tian's eyes were cold as he retreated to a sufficient distance. If not for the mysterious green-gold sword in his hand, he would have retreated long ago. This isn't good. Yellow Cow spoke. He had been staring at the mouth of the calabash all this time and transmitted a message to Chu Feng and the others. This kind of battle might have loosened the seal. The ancient evolved being sealed within the calabash is about to come into being. According to what he said, the lady might not be able to come out even though she had successfully revealed her head just now. But if they were to fight here now, she would most likely attack the seal. Chu Feng discovered something odd. Just now, there was a suppressive force preventing him from approaching the stone tree beside the mouth of the calabash. But after the Black Yak and the Donkey King's Buddhist staff bombardment, the formless force had weakened and he was able to approach. With a swoosh, he put the Donkey King into the pristine jade bottle and rushed forward to pluck the stone fruits. In this short period of time, he rushed forward and picked 4 fruits in a row. "Stop him!" The Marine race members cried out loudly. They had worked hard for a long time, but had only managed to pick 6 fruits. In the end, Chu Feng's harvest was so great. The person who had jumped down from the calabash rushed up once again. Moreover, he was whistling and summoning other peerless experts with great killing weapons to surround Chu Feng's group. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Chu Feng utilized his spiritual arts and picked another 15 fruits. Some were as big as a fist, while others were as big as a human head. All of them were emitting a rich fragrance. This kind of harvest was too shocking. The marine race people's eyes turned red. They already knew the uses of these fruits, but in the end, Chu Feng had harvested nearly 20 of them in such a short time. How could their blood not boil? And they were incomparably jealous. At this time, Chu Feng was just about to continue picking when he sensed a dangerous aura. His spirit trembled as he rapidly retreated. A bronze lamp appeared faintly at the mouth of the calabash, emitting a weak flame as it danced about. Swoosh! Chu Feng retreated and left the mouth of the calabash. At the same time, he felt a formless force appear once again and could no longer approach the front. Go! Chu Feng jumped down from the calabash with the yellow cattle and the Manchurian tiger. The marine race Luo Tian had originally wanted to chase after them, but now he revealed an astonished expression as he stared at the bronze lamp. Divine lamp. That was because he had once seen a few stone carvings in the ruins at the bottom of the sea. There were ancient evolvers holding this lamp, illuminating the heaven and earth as they fought unrivaled under the heavens. At that time, he had yearned for it, but who would have thought he would see an identical lamp here? The yellow cattle also turned back to stare at the lamp with a doubtful expression. He also felt that the lamp was extraordinary and was very similar to a weapon from a certain resplendent holy land. Many marine race people rushed to the mouth of the calabash, but there were also some who chased after Chu Feng's group in a bid to kill them. Come over if you want to die. At this time, the Manchurian tiger was standing beside Chu Feng with his Buddhist staff in hand. As for the Black Yak and the Donkey King, they were already eating the stone fruits within the pristine jade bottle. Moments later, they were full of vigor as they recovered and came out to stand beside Chu Feng. With the demon refinement fruits, they could continue brandishing their Buddhist staffs. In just a moment, they were emboldened and no longer afraid of the marine race's numbers. Goldenrod King catch. Chu Feng took to the air and leapt over 1,000 meters into the air. He broke a fist-sized fruit in half and tossed it to the Mount Hua sect master for him to swallow. In truth, this Golden Bird King had long since understood the uses of this fruit. At this moment, he swallowed it without the slightest hesitation. Very soon, his body began to glow and erupt with terrifying energy. His injuries rapidly healed, and he was back to his peak state. You're courting death. The sea beast fighting with the great Rock King swooped down and wanted nothing more than to hack Chu Feng in half. It was surrounded by astral winds, and overflowing with killing intent. It was shaped like a jackal, and its body was covered in spikes. At the same time, it had a pair of wings and was extremely powerful. Scram! Chu Feng shot out his flying knife and hacked at it. Clang! The sea beast was sent tumbling as it suffered from the tremendous impact. It was very powerful, but it was almost injured by Chu Feng's all-out attack. This made it even more sinister. I'm about to recover. Your time of death has come. The Golden Rock King let out a long cry and charged toward the sea beast. Crane King Kong Tong Sect Master. Chu Feng followed the same pattern and charged over. He found the other white crane from the Sword Palace, as well as the Old Mountain Tortoise and the roaming Jade Temple Master. He also gave them half a fruit each. Where are the Mastiff King and the Wudong Grandmaster? Chu Feng asked. The experts had recovered their strength, and the wounds on their hearts were rapidly healing. Their auras surged, and they no longer evaded. They were ready to kill their enemies. They're inside, the roaming Jade Temple Master informed. Chu Feng and the others didn't stop and charged toward the area behind the Azure Calabash. Rescuing people was more important. They had to find the old Grandmaster and the others as soon as possible. They couldn't stay in this area for long, because the ancient sealed experts could break the seal at any time. Boom! The marine human Luo Tian was attacking frantically at the mouth of the calabash. He wanted to pluck the bronze lamp. He knew it was dangerous, but he still wanted to try. This madman will kill all of us, Yellow Cattle muttered. As expected, blood energy was gushing out from the Azure Calabash like an erupting volcano. It was becoming more and more intense. Luo Tian, stop right now, someone from the marine race berated him. You can't control me. Leave quickly if you're afraid of death. Luo Tian replied coldly. You're crazy. This isn't a good place. Plucking some stone fruits is enough. Don't be greedy. A tiger's roar was transmitted from the distance. A fierce golden tiger with a pair of golden wings was standing on a mountain peak and roaring furiously. It was covered in scales and looked as though it was forged from gold. This was the sea god tiger, one of the top experts among the marine race experts. His status wasn't inferior to Luo Tian's. Mastiff King. Chu Feng heard the tiger's roar and glanced over to find the Mastiff King. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death. His body was drenched in blood, and his chest had been split open by the sea god tiger. Additionally, the 8 Visions Temple Master was also there. One of his arms had long since disappeared. Half of his body was drenched in blood. He was a peerless expert, but he had ended up in such a miserable state. He couldn't even keep his life. Both he and the Mastiff King had been ambushed before and had suffered grave injuries. Otherwise, they wouldn't have ended up like this. Mastiff King, hold on. I'm coming. Chu Feng shouted loudly. The air exploded. Although they were 5 kilometers apart, it only took the blink of an eye for him. Boom! Chu Feng crossed the sky and almost broke the mountain peak. Scram! The sea god tiger roared. His eyes were cold and emotionless as he said, Where did this human insect come from? You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Scram! While speaking, he stretched out a forelimb covered in golden scales and slapped down fiercely in a bid to kill Chu Feng. This large claw was indestructible. The terrifying energy fluctuations caused the mountain peak he was standing on to split apart and was on the verge of exploding. Chapter 297. The Sea God Tiger. Chu Feng didn't dare to be careless against this marine beast because he had heard too much about it along the way. It was one of the most powerful marine race experts. Its combat strength was said to be at the peak. Even a powerful entity like the White Shark King was only slightly valued by it and never viewed as an equal. Along the way, Chu Feng had heard too many rumors about it. For instance, a white crane from the Mount Shu Sword Palace was almost torn apart. A corner of the hollow Jade Temple Master's heart was gouged out, and one of the 8 Visions Temple Master's arms was torn off. Even the Black Yak's horn was chopped off by a random beam of energy from a distance. If not for the yellow cattle and the black yak's golden arhut talismans and Buddhist staffs, they would have surely been slaughtered. This golden sea god tiger was famous for his terrifying strength. Now, a single swipe of his claws caused the air to explode. That was because, in terms of speed alone, he was almost as fast as Chu Feng. One had to know that Chu Feng had grasped the divine feat. Thump! Chu Feng roared as he circulated the demon ox and demon flood dragon fists at full force. The two techniques merged into one, causing his strength to increase explosively as he fought against the sea god tiger head-on. Boom! The entire towering mountain was blasted apart. Chu Feng was below, and the sea god tiger was on top. They fiercely clashed against each other. Fist seals and golden claws collided, causing an astonishing energy beam to erupt. At this time, Chu Feng wasn't holding back at all, but in the end, they were evenly matched. There was a great explosion here. One man and one tiger flew backwards, accompanied by resplendent energy light. The two great experts seemed to be enveloped by the heavenly sun, protecting themselves. At this time, the Manchurian tiger had arrived. He moved quickly and grabbed the Mastiff King, who was coughing up blood from the explosion, and fled with a swoosh. As for the Donkey King, he was kicking his hind legs and cursing as he carried the 8 Visions Temple Master away. He was coughing up blood from the impact of the explosion. The reason why it was so ferocious and dared to come and rescue them was because it had tasted the sweetness of success. It had fought its way into the depths of this space with Chu Feng and the others. They had gone through trials of life and death together, and in the end, it had been imparted the thunderous breathing technique. He felt that following Demon King Chu and risking his life would bring him many benefits. Now that he was asked to save someone, he naturally acted immediately without any hesitation. With its spineless personality, it would never have dared to take such a risk in the past. Although the thunderous breathing technique was indescribably wonderful, it was only an incomplete technique. Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle were not afraid of revealing it. In fact, Chu Feng and Yellow Cattle had already decided to join hands with the old Lama after this and go to the mysterious ancient temple at the foot of the Great Snow Peak in the Himalayas to find the method. Yellow Cattle suspected that it might be the most important place of the Buddhist sects on earth. Perhaps there were clues to the thunderous breathing technique, or even the complete inheritance. That was because even though that place was covered in snow, the sound of thunder could still be heard from time to time. At this moment, both the Mastiff King and the Master of the 8 Visions Temple were like an arrow at the end of its flight. They were about to die because their injuries were too severe. Their internal organs had been torn into pieces. The Mastiff King and the Master of the 8 Visions Temple were covered in blood. After being brought out of the battlefield, Yellow Cattle broke open a fist-sized stone fruit and fed it to each of them. The effects were obvious. The duo's spirit was recovering rapidly, and even their wounds were wriggling as they healed. The sea god tiger had a great killing weapon on him, and Chu Feng also had a golden arhut talisman. However, he hadn't used it for the time being. Boom! They charged together for the second time. Chu Feng had surpassed 5 times the speed of sound. He was terrifyingly fast and practically tore through the sky. With a single leap, he had reached a height of 1,500 meters. Meanwhile, the sea god tiger was also diving down. With a flap of his golden wings, he reached 5 times the speed of sound. Although he was still a bit slower than Chu Feng, he was already 1 level faster than the other experts with 6 severed shackles. Thump! It was as though 2 suns had collided in the sky. The scene was terrifying as energy poured down in torrents and surged in all directions. Ordinary humans would be blinded by the light if they were here. Swoosh! Chu Feng rapidly landed on a mountain peak. The mountain peak under his feet had split into several pieces and was on the verge of collapse. The sea god tiger roared and swooped down. He spread his golden wings, which were even more terrifying than a heavenly blade. Accompanied by violent energy fluctuations, he arrived in an instant. Crack! Chu Feng leapt up and blasted out a fist. A flood dragon and a wild ox roared at the same time and appeared faintly discernible in front of his fist. Accompanied by lightning, the power of the fist was astonishing. As expected, the mountain was blasted apart once again. The two fought fiercely and clashed continuously. In just a short period of time, they had exchanged at least hundreds of blows. They were going all out without holding anything back. This was the most powerful opponent Chu Feng had encountered after his great increase in strength. This golden-scaled entity was courageous and unrivaled. It whistled through the mountain range and was unstoppable. Chu Feng leapt from one mountain peak to another. At times, he would evade, and at other times he would clash head-on. Crack! The sea god tiger swooped down. He spread his wings and directly cut off the mountain peak Chu Feng was on. This was the work of his wings. They were comparable to heavenly blades and were able to cut off a mountain peak with a single charge. Before long, the two experts had exchanged hundreds of blows. In the distance, the marine race experts were overwhelmed. How could this human be so powerful that even the sea god tiger couldn't take him down? How is this possible? White mist surged out from Chu Feng's mouth and nose. All the pores on his body relaxed as he circulated his special breathing technique to harmonize with the drifting energy between the heaven and earth. He was erupting with his greatest power. Roar! The sea god tiger's joints began to crackle. He possessed an ancient breathing technique, a peerless technique exclusive to the tiger race. His body automatically burst forth with tiger roars. Bang! 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 The two experts clashed continuously. At this time, even the golden-winged pung of Mount Hua and the mountain tortoise of Mount Kongtong were astonished. They had never imagined that Chu Feng would be so powerful. That was because they knew how terrifying the sea god tiger was. With a loud boom, the azure calabash in the distance began to sway and spray out blood energy. The scene was becoming increasingly terrifying. Luo Tian, are you courting death? The sea god tiger roared as he fought with Chu Feng. He was furious. That calabash was clearly a lethal weapon and contained a universe within it. How could it be touched so recklessly? However, the marine human Luo Tian had thrown caution to the wind. He wanted to obtain that bronze lamp and was bombarding it continuously. Chu Feng was anxious. There was a madman on the side of the marine race. If by any chance the ancient evolved demon were to escape, everyone here would die. He knew he couldn't delay any longer and had to leave as soon as possible. Chu Feng, the old Grandmaster, is over there. At this time, the Manchurian tiger called out. He had discovered the old Grandmaster from Mount Wudong. Scram! Chu Feng roared as he erupted with his most powerful fist. He forced the sea god tiger back and charged 5 kilometers away. He had also sensed the energy fluctuations there. The sea god tiger gave chase. Chu Feng turned back coldly. He was prepared to use the golden Arhut talisman, but the sea god tiger was very vigilant. He also had a terrifying weapon on him. The sea god tiger slowed down his steps and maintained a certain distance. The air trembled as Chu Feng moved 5 kilometers away in just 3 leaps. He discovered the old Grandmaster was indeed still alive, but his condition was far from good. There was a bone-deep blade wound on the old Grandmaster's back and a number of bloody holes on his chest. They seemed to have been caused by spears. His arms were bent unnaturally and had long since been fractured after suffering a heavy blow. As for his abdomen, legs, and even his head, they were all bleeding profusely. His injuries were so severe that it was a miracle that he was still alive. That was because he was surrounded by a group of marine race experts after encountering the great killing weapon. His situation was simply terrible. Presently, he was fighting an extremely powerful character. It was the marine race's Octopus King. This expert wasn't weaker than the sea god tiger and was also one of the leading characters of the marine race. Chu Feng was deeply astonished. The old Grandmaster's arms had been fractured, but he was actually able to hold on against a stronger opponent. He hadn't died immediately. The old man was executing the Taiji fist. It looked weak and powerless, but he was constantly dispelling the deadly situation and maintaining his vitality. For the time being, the opponent couldn't kill him. However, he was in a miserable state. There were several bloody holes on his body, apparently caused by the octopus's tentacles. At this time, the Octopus King was in human form. However, he had 8 arms and was over 3 meters tall. When his 8 arms attacked, the entire mountain trembled and the energy within them was boundless and astonishing. Kill! Chu Feng arrived. He roared loudly and charged straight at the Octopus King like a heavenly steed. At this moment, a large golden bell appeared around his body. He felt that the Xingyi fist was the most effective method against this 8-armed monster. He formed a golden bell barrier. As expected, the burly man's 8 arms moved at the same time as he approached. The strikes caused the bell to ring and ring loudly. "Senior, don't worry. I'm here." Chu Feng's fist seals erupted and blasted the Octopus King away. He stood in the way and separated the old Grandmaster. "Where do you think you're going?" The sea god Tiger roared as he chased after Chu Feng. "Both of you deserve to die." Chu Feng blasted the Octopus King away and met the sea god Tiger head-on. His flying knife also shot out as he swung out his fist. At the same time, the Manchurian tiger arrived. He retreated with the old Grandmaster and fed him the demon refinement fruit. The old Grandmaster's vitality was weak and his eyes were dim. However, after seeing Chu Feng's ferocity and mastery of the Xingyi fist to such a level, his eyes lit up with admiration. In the air, Chu Feng was alternating between the Xingyi fist and the demon flood dragon and demon ox fists. He was absorbing the energy of the heaven and earth, and his body was becoming increasingly resplendent. He fought fiercely with the 2 experts and clashed from time to time. The marine race was astonished. Even the continental experts were astonished and felt that his potential was astonishing. Boom! Go to hell. Finally, the Black Yak made his move. He was worried that Chu Feng would be in danger because the 2 experts weren't any weaker than Chu Feng. They were simply too powerful. He blasted out with his Buddhist staff. Unfortunately, both the Sea God Tiger and the Octopus King were on guard. They immediately evaded and rushed far away. "Not good, Run." It was at this time that Yellow Cattle cried out with an incomparably anxious expression. In the distance, that azure calabash that was as tall as a mountain was shaking as though it had exploded. Terrifying, thunderous sounds were emitting from within. At the same time, the mouth of the calabash erupted like a volcano. Blood energy rushed into the sky. "Run, a powerful, ancient evolved being is about to come into being," Yellow Cattle warned. That was because the seal was about to be broken. At this point, there was no way to stop it. There was clearly a living being within the azure calabash that hadn't been refined to death. Who knew what kind of earth-shattering things she would do once she came into being? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.